20 stadiums. For 20 teams, the season has died. And all across America, these diamonds have been deserted in the dusty awe of the last great 8. Tonight, it's 2 teams who share a single dream. Now, the Indians and the Yankees must continue their intense drive to make it all come alive. Here we stand under the New York night, within these walls of this storied stadium.
The house that was built.
Some wonder if you can ever go home to a place where only the strong survive. And others can only look inside for that fight to inspire. Will the hunger of a challenger lead us to redemption? Or will the heart of a champion return us to a magical repeat? The Indians and Yankees are next on Fox.
Well, perhaps no better stage for a postseason baseball matchup than the historic house that Ruth built. Yes, Yankee Stadium in the Bronx hosting the Indians and the defending world champion Yankees in Game 1 of the AL Divisional Series. Yes, they come from afar. They come by train, hoping to see New York win Game 1 and begin their quest to defend their World Series championship. But the man standing in the way for the Tribe is right-hander Oral Hershiser, the Bulldog. 8-1. 183 the earned run average in the postseason over his career. Tonight, he opposes Yankee ace right-hander David Cone. He's a big game pitcher, but big question marks tonight. How will that right shoulder hold up against that vaunted Indians attack in tonight's Game 1? Welcome back to the Fox Television Center in Hollywood. It's the first day of the postseason. We're pumped up. We are ready to go. It's Game 1 of the divisional series between the Cleveland Indians and the defending world champion New York Yankees. Hello again, everybody. I'm Chip Carey, joined by Steve Psycho Lyons, and you could not ask for a better way to start the day with those 2 National League games this afternoon.
Oh, great games. There's no better place to be than baseball. I mean, what are we in, week 5 in football? Who cares? You know, I went out on a limb and I predicted who were going to win the division championships. I got those right. I told you who were going to be the wild card selections. I got those right. So now I'm going to tell you who's going to be in the World Series in our first show. It's going to be Baltimore and Atlanta. What do you think?
I'll take Seattle and I'll take Atlanta, and I'll say the team that scores the most runs will win tonight. And I don't like you pointing.
You know, Seattle's not paying you anymore. You don't have to say they're going to win.
Hope, Steve. Great day of action earlier. Let's show you what happened today in the National League. We'll start at Turner Field in Atlanta. Boy, it was gorgeous down in Dixie today. The Astros and Braves opening up the NL Division Series. Ryan Klesko, that was the final hit of the day for Atlanta. A solo home run off Darryl Kyle in the second. Put Atlanta up 2-0, but Greg Maddux, a human can of decon.
He did kill him. 0 for 12 were the Killer Bees with 3 strikeouts. Biggio, Bagwell, and Bell. They did not have a good day, and if you hold those guys down, you're going to beat the Astros.
Complete game win for Maddux and the Braves. 2-1 the final. Braves lead the series 1-0. In the fish tank down in Florida, Jimmy Leland walking pneumonia today, but Charlie Johnson made him feel a whole lot better in the 7th inning. A solo home run to left field ties the game, and then in the bottom of the 9th inning, the Marlins, with 25 wins in their last at-bat, got number 26 today.
Well, I love the trends that you see in the playoffs. Guys that are part-time players coming up and doing the job. Billy Miller hit the big home run for San Francisco, and then Edgar Renteria with the game winner right there. Look for the same thing to happen in tonight's ball game. Guys like Joe Girardi, guys like Brian Giles, guys like Ray Sanchez, coming up in key situations and doing the job where they ordinarily, you wouldn't think that they might get that chance. They can hurt you.
Yeah, unsung heroes are what make the postseason so exciting for everybody come baseball postseason time. Let's go back to that Houston-Atlanta matchup series. Big matchup problems for the Astros starting staff. Darryl Kyle, their ace, pitched his heart out. 2 runs, 2 hits, and he loses. That's just not right.
It's unbelievable. You know, I'm a Yogi Berra type of guy. It's not over until it's over. It's just not looking very good for the Astros right now. How do you send your ace? He throws a 2-hitter. You get beat. What do you do? Come back into the dugout and say, it's okay, we'll get him tomorrow. Yeah, I don't think so.
Denny Nagel, a 20-game winner, Atlanta's 4th starter in the series. The Astros certainly have their work cut out for them. How about the young Marlins? First ever postseason game. Most wins at home in Major League Baseball. Did not look like a rookie team in the postseason today.
Not at all. That's Jimmy Leland finally bringing this team together with the help of Darren Dalton. A lot of young egos on that team that couldn't handle it before. Now Dalton's there. All these guys have played a full season. They can do anything right now. They're all Johnson, Renteria. They all think they can beat you.
Great starts in the National League, and certainly big stories over there as well. That should be a lot of fun to watch the senior circuit continue the postseason run. Let's take a look at what else has happened in the news today. The firing games have begun. No surprise here. Terry Bevington was relieved of his duties as the White Sox manager, a move that Sox GM Ron Schuler called, Steve, in the best interest of the organization.
Well, if they thought it was in the best interest of the organization, then why'd they hire him in the first place? I mean, I don't understand some of these moves.
Yeah, $54 million payroll. The White Sox could not win the AL Central Division, but that's the bad news. The good news is the big hurt Frank Thomas is staying. He'll call Chicago his home for the next 9 years. His current contract extended today through the year 2006. He's guaranteed nearly $32 million, could earn up to $85 million over the length of his deal. That is certainly Steve Lyons-like money. Time for a little psychoanalysis. Let's get ready for Game 1. The Indians and the Yankees from New York. The big story in the Bronx, Cecil Fielder, one of the heroes in last year's postseason run, not in tonight's starting lineup.
Well, this is not a bad move by Joe Torre, and he proved to us last year that he's not afraid to set down one of his stars in favor of another. Cecil Fielder, this is last week off of Oral Hershiser. 3 home runs since he came back off the DL. He dropped 25 pounds. Which is like throwing a suitcase off the Queen Mary. But Curtis is in the outfield because he plays better defense. And Timmy Raines, you get that left-handed bat in the lineup. The sinker doesn't bother him as much. And he's walked 6 times this year, again, in his career against Hershiser at the top of the order. He can coax a walk. You get the left-hander in there, a little bit better team speed at the top of the lineup.
Tim, Joe, and Bob are going to talk about tonight's pitching matchup tonight. But 2 evenly matched ball clubs, Steve, with big problems in their starting rotations entering this series.
Well, you have a situation where in the pitching staff, for the Cleveland Indians, they have one guy that's too old, one guy that's too young, and another guy that can't get anybody out. Here's David Justice offensively for that club. He's had a great season, and Manny Ramirez would love to come back and beat the Yankees. He's from the New York area, so no problem there.
Should be a great matchup. Yankees won the season series 6-5. We expect a lot of fun tonight. Time to send you now to Yankee Stadium for Game 1 of the AL Division Series, the Yankees and the Indians. Here's Joe Buck, Tim McCarver, and Bob Brenly.
Well, do you think they're not charged up here at Yankee Stadium? If you do, you're wrong. There's no better place to be in October in the game of baseball than right here at Yankee Stadium as we get ready for the Cleveland Indians and the New York Yankees. Of course, I'll probably say that on Sunday when we're in Cleveland, just so we don't make anybody mad. Joe Buck and Tim McCarver getting ready for... When did you slip in here?
I just got here.
Bob Brenly is here with us as well. We've got the 3-men-in-a-booth situation for you here tonight as we get ready for Game 1. And I guess, guys, there's no better place to start talking about this series than with the Game 1 starters. The starting pitching for tonight, 2 guys that know how to pitch this time of year. And for the Yankees, we've been talking about it. Everybody's been talking about it. The health is the #1 concern of David Cone and of the Yankees going into the postseason.
The healthy right shoulder of David Cone, and if it's healthy, this is what the Indian hitters can look for off of David Cone. A multi-pitch arsenal. He throws everything. If he does have a sore shoulder, and this is very important, he will invent stuff and improvise on the mound to get hitters out, manufacturers out. He goes very deep into counts, and also he throws that killer splitter when he's ahead with 2 strikes. So I guess like the biblical David, Yankee fans are probably thinking that the other David, everything rests on his right sling tonight.
What kind of stuff is he inventing on the mound? Like the cotton gin, flubber?
Improvising.
Here's flubber over here to my left. Bob Brenly. Let's talk about Oral Hershiser. Let's talk about the Cleveland Indians. It was a gimme putt for Mike Hargrove to just roll that ball into the hole and say, Oral Hershiser, you're my guy. I mean, at 39, he's still a heck of a weapon to have.
Hey, you mentioned the term Mr. October in New York, and Yankee fans will immediately think of Reggie Jackson for his postseason heroics. But Oral Hershiser could very easily stake a claim on that nickname as well. He's been absolutely spectacular in the postseason. That last footnote right there, the Yankees versus right-handed starters this year, 72-40. They're 2 games under 500 against left-handed starters. We asked Mike Hargrove, if you had a healthy John Smiley, who is a left-hander, if you had him available, would he start Game 1? Mike Hargrove said, no, Oral Hershiser's my guy in Game 1.
And then he said, get out of my office, Brenly. I'm getting ready for Game 1.
Scram.
We are ready for Game 1 here at Yankee Stadium. The Cleveland Indians, the New York Yankees, as the Yankees begin their march back toward the World Series. Well, you think the Indians are scared to take on the Yankees here in Game 1 of this series? That's Kevin Seitzer before the ball game during the lineup. I hope that's a joke. Have you seen Kevin lately?
Halloween's early for Kevin tonight.
One word for you, fluoride. Starting lineups coming up. First pitch of Game 1 of this division series. The Indians and Yankees coming your way after this from your local Fox station. Welcome back to Yankee Stadium. It's fall ball. It's baseball in October. It just feels right here at the stadium in the Bronx. David Cone will make his entrance. The Yankees are on the field, and this crowd is packed in here at Yankee Stadium. A couple of deep breaths, and away we go. David Cone heads out to work game one of this division series with the Cleveland Indians. A look at their lineup. Viv Roberts will lead it off at second base with Omar Vizquel batting second. Manny Ramirez is in right field. Jim Thome cleans up 40 home runs this season, 5th Indian all-time to do that. David Justice, what a comeback. He's the DH and batting behind Thome. Then Matt Williams at third base came on strong at the end of the year. Sandy Alomar Jr. is the catcher with Brian Giles in left. And Marquise Grissom, who starred for the Braves for those years in the World Series, really beat up on the Yankees last year, is batting ninth. The Yankee defense, take a look at it, 6th in the American League. A fielding percentage of .983, just above the middle ground in the American League. And the surprise, I think, for Yankee fans, Chad Curtis is in left field. He gets the start. Tim Raines is in the lineup as a DH. Cecil Fielder is sitting on the bench. $7.2 million cheerleader here at the start of game one. There is Chad Curtis, Bob Brenly, and he was a big addition to this team midway through the year.
And Joe Torre said with David Cone on the mound, the defense was going to be at a premium tonight. He wanted to put his best defensive ball club behind David Cone, and Chad Curtis, as you can see from these replays, can get it done out there in left field. Tim Raines, at his advanced age, doesn't cover quite as much ground, doesn't have as good a throwing arm, so Torre going with the better defender in left field.
And you're talking, Tim McCarver, about a big left field here at Yankee Stadium, so get that good defense behind this guy, David Cone, a big money pitcher, and I'm not talking about salary. Big game, put him on the mound.
The last time that David pitched was last Wednesday. He pitched a 5-inning no-hitter against the Cleveland Indians. However, he did walk 5. He walked 86 on the season. That was 4th highest in the American League. And that's the one thing that you have to be careful about when you're facing the Indians. They have some very patient hitters. Jim Thome led the American League in walks. David Justice walked 80 times in 450 at-bats this year. If the Indians can lay off of David Cone's balls just off the plate, they'll be much more effective against him tonight. And one thing that may be hard for Mel Stottlemyre and Joe Torre to monitor, David Cone in the past has gone out of the strike zone intentionally. Right. To get aggressive hitters to swing at pitches out of the zone. But because he is not as sharp as he's used to being at this time of year, you really have to be careful and make that determination. Is he missing the zone on purpose, or is he missing the zone because he's hurting? Perhaps the way to tell whether his shoulder is okay in the first and second inning is if he's throwing a lot of strikes and getting ahead. Then I feel like David will think his shoulder's well enough to challenge the hitters.
But there is no doubt that as he enters this start under the very watchful eye of Mel Stottlemyre, they do not know how David Cone will respond here in game one. The first of 3 rounds the Yankees hope for, and there is no bigger piece to this Yankee puzzle than the man on your screen right now. This broadcast also available in Spanish by utilizing the SAP button on your television. We're tired of talking. It's time to play baseball. Viv Roberts leads it off. A .302 hitter with 4 home runs. Viv Roberts, a late season addition from the Kansas City Royals, and his first trip to the postseason in a very long big league career. 2-0.
Viv Roberts playing in 1,107 regular season games before his first trip to postseason.
3-0 on Viv Roberts. Cone hasn't missed by much. Jose Cardinal is imploring the outfield defense to look at him in front of the dugout and reposition themselves. There's a strike, the old automatic 3-1. Roberts, Vizquel, and Ramirez here in the first inning for the Indians. Their 3rd straight trip to the postseason. Same for the Yankees. A leadoff walk, and not the start David Cone dreamed of last night. A leadoff walk, and Roberts is on base. Tim Tashida is the home plate umpire here this evening, with Dan Morrison at first, Rick Reed at second. Dale Scott is over at third. Down the left field line, the crew chief, Richie Garcia, and Darrell Cousins down the right field line here in this division series with the Indians and Yankees. 1 on, nobody out for Omar Vizquel.
speed at the top of the lineup for the Indians, and Robertson Vizquel. Speed at the bottom with Giles and Grissom. 8, 9, 1, and 2.
Speed. An early look at it, and a stolen base for Biff Roberts. He had 18 during the regular season in the early test for Girardi. Roberts got a great jump, and it wasn't even close.
Well, David Cone, so much of his concentration right now is just going to throwing strikes at home plate. He wants to get ahead of a hitter sometime tonight. Didn't really pay a lot of attention to Biff Roberts at first base. Didn't give Joe Girardi much of a chance to throw him out anyway.
He had 18 during the regular season. Now he has 1. In the postseason, he did get ahead. Cone did get ahead of Vizquel, who shows bunt. Roberts to third. Vizquel out on the sacrifice, 1-3. And an early look at how Mike Hargrove wants to play this game with David Cone. Get the early lead. Get that early lead for Oral Hershiser. And the Indians have a runner at third, only 1 out.
I think we talked so much about David Cone's deliveries to home plate, but fielding bunts off balance on the third base side and making that throw to first, that is something that has to be of concern to Joe Torre as well in this ball game. I thought the same thing, Bob. If he's going to re-injure his shoulder, that's the type of play where he could re-injure it.
Here's Manny Ramirez. Lives here in New York and has made a living hitting against New York. Terrific season, hitting .328, fourth in the league, and he takes a strike. Some say the best hitter to come out of this area since Rod Carew. A guy that at the young age of 25 has over 100 home runs in the big league. Into shallow center, falling in a hurry for a hit. In to score is Biff Roberts. Just like that, the Indians out in front here in the first inning. Ramirez knocks home the Biffer. Hit a pretty good pitch off David Cone also. The ball low and away. Of course, Ramirez, a good low ball hitter. This a slider low and away. He hit it off the end of the bat, plopping it in front of Bernie Williams as the Indians take the lead. A walk, stolen base, sacrifice, and this. So the walk did get it started, and it's tough to get around that leadoff walk. And against this Cleveland Indian lineup, which is as balanced and as good as you will find in the big leagues, double tough to get around it, and David Cone just simply could not. Here is Jim Thome. He's only 27 years old and a breakthrough year with 40 home runs. 1 on, 1 out, 1-0 Indians in the first. And a ball from Cone.
And Jim Thome loves hitting behind Manny Ramirez. Ramirez, with a .328 average on the year, has been on first base a lot. Jim Thome likes that ball down and in like a lot of left-handed hitters. Likes to pull the ball. There's a hole on the right side of the infield right now.
You look at that hit zone, the red are those danger zones for any opposing pitcher, and I think Cone just found one. Thome with a base hit, and 3 of the first 4 have reached the only out on the sacrifice bunts. And it has been a rough start for Cone and the Yankees here in the first.
One thing about that leadoff walk, what it does, it coaxes a pitcher back into the strike zone. The walk and then the sacrifice, and then the slider hit by Ramirez, and now a fastball tailing away to Thome off the end of the bat, but finds a hole also. Yeah, neither base hit exactly crushed. No. Can't argue with the results if you're an Indians fan.
And now with 2 on, only 1 out, David Cone will work with David Justice. That caught the outside corner. Justice, 3rd in the American League, hit .329, his first year in the American League.
Look at this sinker away from David Cone. Paints the outside corner on David Justice.
And now the 0-1, strike 2.
That looked like a splitter, Bob. I really couldn't tell. It certainly wasn't a breaking ball. As a matter of fact, David Cone does not throw many breaking balls to left-handed batters, and that did look like the splitter. The bottom fell out of it.
Crowd wants a strikeout. 1-2.
David's strikeout pitch to left-handed batters is the splitter. His strikeout pitch to right-handed batters is the slider.
Already 1 run home, 2 on, 1 out. Still alive is Justice.
That appeared to be another split finger from David Cone. This is his out pitch, that killer splitter. When he gets ahead, you can see the bottom fall out of that ball. Justice able just to get a piece of it and foul it off at Joe Girardi's foot.
Pretty good action on that pitch. And again, the 1-2 pitch to Justice. Martinez to second, out, back to first, safe. And it's first and third, 2 out here in the first inning. Justice into the 3-6 force out.
I think a good throw has him at first base. The Jeter throw a little bit to the home plate side. Nicely turned and quickly turned by Tino Martinez. Watch the throw to the outfield side. Nicely done. But the hard slide by Tomey perhaps caused the bad throw toward home. On that replay, it looked like it would have been safe with a good throw.
Nice athletic effort there by David Cone, though. His momentum was taking him out towards right field. The throw was back towards home plate. And now it appears that David Cone just wanted to towel off a little bit, got dirty over there. Most pitchers don't like to get dirt on their uniform, although I don't think David Cone's one of those guys.
You know, you could almost hear a collective sigh here. Gene Monahan, and now the crowd responding because Gene Monahan, the trainer, going out and people are saying, oh no, he might be hurt. And he was going out because he was a little muddy instead.
Might have just been excited to see Gene Monahan. There he is. There he is. Here he is, Matt Williams. Finished strong and had another 100 RBI season. 105. He hit 263. His first time back in the postseason since 1989 with the Giants. Strike 1.
You know, Mike Hargrove was talking about Matt Williams' turnaround at the end of the season and said that basically the reason was he started using the whole field again. He called him one of the streakiest ball players he has ever seen. Matt Williams could hit 5 or 6 home runs in 1 week and then go 0 for his next 30 and then hit 5 or 6 home runs again the next week.
Runners at the corners, 2 out. Indians out in front by 1. That gets away from Girardi, and the Indians now lead by 2. Ramirez scores on a wild pitch, and it's been a 2-run first inning for Cleveland against David Cone.
One of the problems that David has is that he is vulnerable to the wild pitch. As a matter of fact, he led the American League with 3 other pitchers in wild pitches with 14. And this breaking ball in the dirt, that's normally a ball that is handled by the catcher, but the ball hit the heel of the glove. You try to keep the glove out of balls that are in the dirt. You use the protector. You use the glove to catch it, the protector to stop it.
Now with Justice down at second, 2 out, a 1-ball, 1-strike count on Williams. And drilled either on the arm, wrist, or hand, and down to first is Matt Williams. Just getting ready to say that if David Cone, as you take a look at the hit by pitch, might have caught him up around the bicep, which is the best possible place for Williams to be hit. And I was just about to say, if Cone can get out of this with only the 1-run scoring, with 1 run in, 2 on, 1 out, heart of the order coming up, well, then this would have been a minor victory for Cone to get through this with only 1 run crossing the plate. Now, a run scores on a wild pitch. He hits Williams. He's got 2 on, 2 out, and the Indians have a chance for a big first inning.
And really no breathing room as you get to the bottom of this Indians order. Sandy Alomar comes to the plate batting .324. Not really a chance to cruise through the bottom third of the order as you can against some ball clubs.
There are the runners on with Justice and Williams, 2 out. And here is Sandy Alomar Jr. A strike on the outside corner. A year like no other for Sandy Alomar Jr. at the plate. Hit .324, hit 21 home runs, drove in 83. A ball and a strike.
30-game hitting streak at the All-Star game. The most valuable player in Cleveland, the All-Star game. 2-run homer to win it for the American League.
Two on, two out, and just low, 2-1.
Now this is the home run Alomar hit off Sean Estes in the All-Star game in Cleveland earlier this summer. Boy, nothing quite like that, hitting a home run in an All-Star game at your home ballpark.
Sure.
He was on a roll at that time during this season. Borderline pitch that catches the inside corner. Alomar didn't like the call. 2-2.
That was a key pitch that I think David Cohn got a break on. That ball looked like it backed up inside, so instead of 3 balls and a strike, it's 2-2 to Alomar.
Into left field, sends Curtis back at the track, at the wall, and it's gone. A 3-run home run for Sandy Alomar Jr. And this is indeed a big first inning for the Indians. They lead by 5.
Obviously not a location David Cohn wanted to hit with this pitch. Sandy Alomar able to pull his hands in close to his body, make sure to get the head of the bat on the ball, and Chad Curtis gives it a valiant effort out there in left field, but just enough to see a fan make a nice catch, but that doesn't do David Cohn any good.
Chad wasn't playing high enough for that ball. It looked like a hanging splitter. Excuse me, Joe.
Just going to say, with 2 out, nobody on, here's the number 8 hitter, Brian Giles. Sandy Alomar clubs that first inning home run to make it a 5-run lead. Now the count 1-1 on Giles.
Take a look at the sequence to Sandy Alomar. The slider on the corner, the splitter misses inside. The slider was low. They got the break, and that did look like a hanging splitter, about thigh high, but not for long.
You know, most pitchers will throw a couple of different split fingers. One that they want to throw for a strike, which has less tumbling movement, less movement in the strike zone, and then the nasty one that they throw with 2 strikes.
A guy like Hideo Nomo, for instance, does that.
That appeared to be the one he was just trying to throw over the plate for a strike. Got it up a little bit too high on the inside part of the plate, and Sandy Alomar took care of it.
Now Cohn is behind on the count, 3-1. Giles swinging hard, fouls away, strike 2, full count. What a year for Sandy Alomar Jr. We talked about that run in the middle of the season, the 30-game hitting streak, the All-Star game home run, and now in Game 1 of this division series, the 3-run home run as Giles pounds one foul toward the upper deck. And Mel Stottlemyre already on the phone to the bullpen.
Well, originally, Joe Torre and Mel Stottlemyre were looking for 5 innings, possibly 6, but he has thrown a ton of pitches here in the first.
That's down the right field line. Sanchez gives way to O'Neill, and that long first inning finally over for David Cohn. He hangs his head. He walks off. 5-0 Indians, a 3-run shot by Alomar. And a big start for Cleveland here in New York. Welcome back to Yankee Stadium. Not a very happy look on the face of Joe Torre, and why would it be? A 5-0 lead for the Indians. Here's the New York Yankees lineup. Tim Raines will lead off. He's the DH. Derek Jeter batting second and short. Paul O'Neill in right, and then Bernie Williams. So valuable to this New York Yankee club. And how about the postseason? 8 home runs and a .367 average in his very young career. Tino Martinez, big year at first base for the Yankees. Jack Curtis in left. Wade Boggs at third. Joe Girardi catching, and Ray Sanchez batting ninth at second base. You look at the defense for the Indians, very solid on the left side. Williams, Vizquel combining for 7 Gold Glove Awards, Vizquel has won the last 4 at short in the American League. And on the mound is the right-hander. Should we throw Bulldog out there already?
We might as well.
The Bulldog, Oral Hershiser. The numbers for the season, but the numbers in his career in the postseason, which Bob Brenly laid out in our open, as good as any.
Staggering.
As good as any who have pitched in the postseason in the history of this game. 8-1. And he deals ball 1 low to Tim Raines. Raines hit .321. 4 homers, 38 driven in, and he flies one to right for Ramirez. Manny is there, 1 up, 1 down. And a good start for Hershiser to keep the leadoff man off base. That's Raines. And now Derek Jeter will walk in.
Hershiser's similar to David Cohn in that he tries to get guys out with balls off the plate and makes them swing at balls off the plate, but he's got a 5-run lead right now. He needs control of the lower strike zone. His balls sink. They may come up later when he gets tired. The lower part may get tired. And like David Cohn, he can dominate at crunch time, as Bob said about his postseason heroics.
A lot of similarities between these two starters today when healthy.
And Hershiser's smart enough, too, to throw 3 straight strikes with a 5-run lead.
Line drive, but right at Vizquel. Jeter is gone, and the first 2 Yankees are gone. And with the bases empty, the batter will be Paul O'Neill. The first time in his major league career, which has been very solid, he drove in over 100 runs. Knocked in 117, hit .324. And after David Cohn struggled through a long first inning, he's about to head right back out to work as Oral Hershiser has set the first 2 Yankees down in order. Base is empty, and O'Neill grounds to second. Hershiser makes it look extremely easy, which is what he's done throughout his entire big league career in October. After 1, 5-0 Cleveland. Well, after a 31-pitch first inning, David Cohn did not get much of a break over on the dugout bench. We look at the outfield hits by direction for Marquise Grissom, and he will spread it around, and the Yankees play him straight away as he leads it off. How good is this Cleveland Indians lineup? Got a guy like Marquise Grissom batting in the number 9 spot. Talk to a lot of American League managers, and they'll tell you they like a guy like Grissom in that number 9 spot with speed to bridge the gap between the bottom of the order and the top of the lineup. It'll be Grissom, Roberts, and Vizquel as Marquise has a 1-1 count.
That's a good point, Joe, because you don't splinter speed. You put speed back to back to back to back, as the Indians have done. Brian Giles hitting 8th, Grissom 9th, and then at the top of the order, Roberts and Vizquel.
Grissom now in the hole, a ball and 2 strikes. You talk about Marquise Grissom, you look at his resume. 4 consecutive Gold Glove Awards. That in the National League, 2-time All-Star. And a guy who last year, well, the Yankees saw enough of him. Hit .444 against the Yankees in the World Series last October. We talk about these 2 pitchers being big game pitchers as Grissom strikes out to start this second inning. Marquise Grissom, a .404 hitter in World Series play, second highest ever.
Yeah, because he had .360 against the Indians in '95. He's the only player in this game that has played against the Indians and the Yankees in the World Series.
First strikeout for Cohn as he gets Grissom on that pitch that rode up and in. And Viv Roberts bounces one off the plate, going to be close. Cohn to the bag to beat Roberts. 2 out. Put out 3-1, and the first 2 are gone for the Indians in the second.
That was a bit blip on our mic at first base, wasn't it?
It's the ball right off home plate. Got the high bouncer. Tino Martinez in good position to make the play. Get a look at the bip scooting down that first base line.
There's your blip.
Bip, blip.
Roberts charged up, man. He gets a chance in the postseason. Usually packing up and heading home this time of year, and he finally gets to play on this national stage as Vizquel digs in, 2 out, nobody on. A 280 hitter during the regular season. He bunted Roberts over to third back in the first, and now he blooped one into shallow left. Chad Curtis can't make the catch. And the throw gets past both Jeter and Sanchez, but Martinez there to back up, and the Yankee fans saying, I thought this guy was in that lineup for defense. He came in, had a chance to catch it, but looked like he overran it.
Got a long way to go. I think you're right, Joe. I think he was in better position than he realized. When he makes this dive for the ball, he almost has to drag his leg to keep himself in position to catch the ball. Perhaps 1 or 2 more strides here, and he can catch this ball without leaving his feet. It hits off the thumb of his glove. Bernie Williams heads up, backing up the play. You can see he was there, should have caught it.
Not to make an excuse for Chad Curtis, but he is primarily a center fielder. And when a left-hander hits the ball to the left fielder, the ball will come back to you. And that's possibly a reason why he misread that little looper by Vizquel.
So now 1 out and 2 out, and here's Manny Ramirez, who drove home a run with a hit, later scored on a wild pitch in that long first inning. Pretty good pitch there from David Cone. And maybe there was a little hesitation on the part of Cone in the first inning to let it fly, let it loose, and seems to be throwing the ball a little better here in the second inning.
A little freer.
Yeah, and a little more giddy up at the end of that fastball. He threw mostly sinkers in the first inning, sinkers, splits, and a couple of sliders. This inning, it seems like he's gone more to the 4-seam fastball. Struck Grissom out with one up and out of the strike zone.
Check on Vizquel, who had a career-high 43 steals during the regular season.
Mike Hargrove telling us before the game that the Indians will run tonight to steal a base. They won't run as part of a hit and run. Quite the opposite of what the Yankees do with guys on base.
Vizquel measuring Cone, staying put as Ramirez overmatched there, 91 from Cone. And strike 2.
If you're going to steal a base, what you try to do is pick a ball in the dirt, a splitter or a breaking ball. And it's a good time right now for Vizquel possibly to run, because it appears that that's what Ramirez may get. It looked like Davey Nelson may have been telling Vizquel exactly that at first.
This crowd wants to get back into this game. Strikeout of Ramirez might help, and it stays 0-2.
David Cone frustrated with himself right there. Got away with a real bad pitch. A hanging slider stayed up and out over the plate. A pitch that Manny Ramirez normally handles very well. David Cone got a big-time break right here. Look at the location of that pitch, up and out over the plate. A little bit off speed. Those are nice to hit.
1 on, 2 out. Vizquel aboard and an 0-2 count on Ramirez. This crowd wants back into this game. The Yankee bats will try to get it done. Bernie Williams will lead it off. Heart of the lineup, 5-0 Indians.
The 1997 American League Division Series on Fox is brought to you by the company you count on wherever life takes you. General Motors, people in motion. By Visa, it's everywhere you want to be. By Aflac, insuring over 40 million people worldwide. And by Lotus, work the web with Lotus Domino.
We are back at Yankee Stadium. This game's probably over, right? I wouldn't keep watching if I were you.
Well, those guys aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Imagine the disappointment those two would have felt had David Cone not been able to pitch in the postseason.
Oh.
But I bought the paint. I had the face paint and the Cone thing. Bernie Williams leads it off with Tino Martinez and Chad Curtis to follow. Heart of the order, and These are the guys trying to get the Yankees back in this game.
If that were to happen, they would have had to have changed to their Brian Bowringer uniform.
Which is a little tougher to
Very unusual.
portray
Yes,
with face paint. A ball from Hershiser to start this second inning. Bernie hit .328 during the regular season. 31 games, 2 times on the disabled list with hamstring trouble. But while we talk about Cone and his importance to this team and this pitching staff, this Yankee team is a different team when they don't have Bernie Williams in that lineup. Completely different team. Two and 0. And why is he important to this team in the postseason? 20 games, 8 home runs, 20 driven in. And in those 9 division series games, he has hit 5 home runs. 3-0 from Hershiser. At some point this inning, Bob Brenly, I want you to tell everybody about those high socks that the Indians are wearing. That's a big story here. Automatic on 3-0. It's 3-1.
Well, why not right now?
Okay.
Well, the ball club wore the Sox up high to honor Jim Thome on his birthday. Since that time, they've played very good ball, 16-10, so they continue to wear them up. And probably will right through the postseason until they show signs of not playing well with the high Sox.
Or until they go to the pool on vacation. 16-10. He's doing that on Thome's birthday on August 27th.
Kind of a throwback. And Jim Thome's kind of a throwback player as well.
Williams stays alive. It stays 3-2. You weren't a superstitious guy, were you, when you played?
If I was, it didn't do any good. No, I tried all that stuff, but it just didn't seem to help.
You wanted to be superstitious.
Yeah. Unlike Wade Boggs. I wish I had a reason to be superstitious, but I never had things go good long enough to pinpoint anything that may have helped.
Justified for Boggs. 3-2 to Williams. A leadoff walk. What does Earl Hershiser say about pitching to this New York lineup?
In pitching to the Yankees, the key is to keep the people off the base that are supposed to be off the base, the people that you can get out, and so those RBI guys don't come up with men in scoring positions. They seem to be much tougher hitters when they're men in scoring position than when there's nobody on.
Those Yankee hitters' eyes light up when they have a chance to knock home runs, and nobody did it better for the Yankees this season than him. Tino Martinez, 141 driven in. Number 2 in the league behind Griffey. 44 home runs. And to right, a base hit. Williams will turn but stop, and it's 2 on, nobody out in the second.
It's a close ball game. Bernie Williams goes to third base and makes it easily. But when you trail by 5, it forces you into very passive games. You have to play the one base at a time type offense until you can try to get closer. You can see Manny Ramirez in right field. See how deep he was, trying to make sure on that ball that it doesn't get by him. I think Bernie makes it easily, but you can't afford to take the chance when you're trailing by 5.
I agree with you. That's the standard logic when you trail by 5 runs, to take it one base at a time unless you're sure you can make it. But I really think that the Yankees should put as much pressure on Manny Ramirez in right field as they can in this series.
Chad Curtis digs in with 2 on, nobody out. Playing Chad Curtis and having him in your starting lineup is a great idea to add to your defense until you fall behind 5-0. They have a guy, Cecil Fielder, on their bench, making $7.2 million this season to pound the baseball, and he's just watching right now. Strike 2 on Curtis, 0-2.
Only problem with that logic with the Yankees trailing by 5, if you put Tim Raines in left field, then the pitcher becomes a designated hitter. because Tim Raines started the game as the DH, and you can't move him out of that spot into a defensive position.
2 on, nobody out here in the second. Curtis stays alive.
Well, you can, but there's a price to pay if you do.
Well, I'm not saying make the change now in the middle of the game,
right.
but going in, you have your #1 pitcher on the mound. You're thinking defense, trying to clamp down, and then the Indians get 5 runs in the first inning, kind of throws the plan right out the window.
Right.
But Curtis did put up a good year offensively. Traded to the Yankees from the Indians earlier this season, but set up here 0-2. Two on, nobody out. A walk and a hit against Hershiser. And now Curtis in that battle mode, trying to find a mistake.
You know, Tim, you talked in the open about David Cohn. We saw his scouting report. You could almost apply the same scouting report to Oral Hershiser, with the exception of that split-fingered fastball, a pitch that Oral does not use. You could see him drop down at low 3/4 right there, get a little extra movement on that sinker. Chad Curtis only able to foul it off his foot at home plate. He will invent stuff out there on the mound as well.
Yep.
A ball and 2 strikes on Chad Curtis. And the slow roller is foul. Wade Boggs will follow Curtis, then Girardi, then Sanchez. And this is a Yankee lineup. Pretty dangerous top to bottom. Curtis trying to chase those 2 guys. 2-2 and a pretty good at bat here for the veteran outfielder. A battle between Hershiser and Curtis.
He got that hanger you were talking about, Joe. That was the worst pitch that Oral Hershiser has thrown in this game. The breaking ball that just sat there. Watch Chad Curtis's eyes light up. Breaking ball off of Oral Hershiser, inside part of the plate, and that ball just missing from going fair. 2 inches.
Got enough guys down the line to call that ball foul. Don Zimmer hoping it was fair, and now ball 3 is low to Curtis. 3-2. You talk about a heck of an at-bat. It was 0-2 in a blink.
Now do you send the runners? You're trailing by 5. Sinker ball pitcher's going to get ground balls. You don't want to strike them out, throw them out. I think you send them here. Still early in the ball game.
One of the loudest ovations you'll hear for a walk in the second inning of a ball game. That was a tremendous at-bat by Chad Curtis right there. You mentioned, Joe, he was 0-2 before he had a chance to get a toehold in that batter's box. Fouled off some tough pitches. Wasted a hanger, pulled it foul down the line. Able to finally draw the walk.
A lot of guys, too, when they just miss an extra base hit, as Curtis did, the ball 2 or 3 inches foul, you think the at-bat's over from a psychological standpoint, because you realize you're not going to get another hanger like that, especially from a guy like Hershiser. And he took those last 2 pitches and just missed.
And now the bases are loaded for Wade Boggs. Hershiser up to 24 pitches. That last column, the only column that matters. 5-0 Indians, but for how long? Last time we saw this guy in October, he was on horseback. Strike one.
And you know Boggs is a guy that's going to make Hershiser throw strikes. He's not going to go out of the zone.
Barking at Tim Tashida, thinking that ball is outside and high.
Bases loaded, nobody out. In a 5-run game, and there's the ball, 1-1. When I use the word October, I'm using it in a figurative sense, of course, this being the 30th of September. Career with the bases loaded. Who would the Yankees rather have at the plate? Double play ball. Roberts starts it. Vizquel can't turn it. It's a 5-1 game.
He went in high at second base, and that's why the Indians are going to argue. Chad Curtis, realizing the leaping ability of Omar Vizquel, goes in standing up. And fortunately for the Yankees, they got the call from Rick Reed at second base. If he had slid, Vizquel would have gone over him. And Chad Curtis standing up to take Vizquel out, and Omar claiming interference right there. And I think he's got a pretty good point, too.
Well, as Hargrove pleads the Indians' case, this was a sure double play ball with Boggs running until this.
Well, there's no rule that says you have to slide at second base on a double play attempt. Curtis, as you could see, attempted to slide. He started to get into position to slide, but then saw Vizquel coming across the bag. As Tim mentioned, he realizes that Vizquel just would have jumped over him and completed the double play. So Curtis broke it down, went in standing up, and did make contact.
In the regular season, if that happens, there is retaliation. And usually it's the next time up. It's doubtful that it will happen in a playoff series. But the next time Chad Curtis goes into second base, if Omar Vizquel is going to uncork a ball, I'll guarantee you he's going to try to get down and make Curtis get down, or otherwise hit him in the coconut.
Well, the key to the play was Curtis was between first and second in such a hurry and right on top of Vizquel as Girardi comes up empty with strike one. And I, like you, Bob, I'm wondering. There's no rule that says the runner has to slide. He goes in standing up, but the problem for the Indians, he was just right on top of Vizquel by the time he got the flip from Roberts.
You really had nothing to lose by taking that approach. It's going to be a double play if you don't do that. I guess that's what Chad was thinking.
And Vizquel was in line between first and second base. Technically, he was in the baseline. It wasn't like he came across the bag and was clear of the base in a position where if Curtis hit him, he would have been considered out of the baseline.
You can see that facial expression by Vizquel. He is livid right now.
0-2 pitch to Girardi is low and away, 1-2. Runners at the corners, one out. The run that scored Williams, who led off this inning with a walk. A hit by Martinez, a walk to Curtis, a force out off the bat of Boggs for the RBI. It's a 4-run Cleveland lead here in the second with runners at the corners, one out. Big strikeout for Hershiser, his first of the night. And Girardi leaves, runners at the corners, and now two out.
Now, what do you suppose the book is on Joe Girardi from the Cleveland Indians? Slider away, slider away, slider further away, slider away.
And an at-bat that slip slide away.
They didn't even bother to set any of those pitches up.
Nope.
Usually you would throw a fastball inside to keep the guy honest and make sure he doesn't lean out there, but Hershiser 4 consecutive sliders on the outside part of the plate.
The Yankees need a pickup from Ray Sanchez. Takes the ball low and away. Hit .312 in 38 games with the Yankees. That's his overall season combined between New York and Chicago with the Cubs. Batting in the number 9 spot. First and third, two out. 1-1 from Hershiser. Yankees loaded the bases with nobody out. Hershiser trying to keep it a one-run inning. 2 balls and a strike. Inside corner, a strike, 2-2.
Well, Hershiser has really fallen in love with that slider this inning. That was a slider on the inside part of the plate. The ones to Girardi to strike him out, and the first pitch to Ray Sanchez were on the outside corner. This was actually a mistake. You can see Alomar was set up on the outside corner, drew it back to the inside corner, but throws the hitter nonetheless.
First and third, 2 out. A little too far away, 3-2, and now the runner at first, Boggs, will take off. The Indians will play behind the runner. Foul.
Sanchez is a right field hitter anyway. That's his slot to right center and to right field in the position. And with Hershiser primarily keeping the ball away, you'd think Ray would be going that way.
Left center field is wide open because of that. Runners at first and third, and the step to third, look to first move.
Fish ain't biting.
That move works once every vernal equinox.
So when do we do again?
Sometime in 1999.
I don't want to miss it.
Again, the 3-2 to Ray Sanchez. That ball's trying to get out of play, and it will. The runners return to first and third. The Indians came up with that big 2-out, 3-run home run in the first inning, supplied by Sandy Alomar. The Yankees asked for something out of Ray Sanchez. The third, foul.
Another one just fouled down the third base line. The ball hit by Chad Curtis, and now by Ray Sanchez, a little farther foul, but not by much. Wow.
Sanchez has always been considered a free swinger in his days in the National League. In 138 bats for the Yankees this year, he's walked 5 times. Really surprised to see Hershiser giving him good enough pitches to get the head of the bat on right here. He'll probably chase out of the zone if Orel would go to something in the dirt low and away.
Little squirter back to Hershiser. Could have been a big inning. The Yankees loaded the bases with nobody out, and they get only one. The big guys coming up for the Indians in the third. Back to Yankee Stadium after this from your local Fox station. David Cone back to work into the third inning. It will be Thome, Justice, Williams, heart of the lineup for the Indians, who lead by 4 now. After the Yankees came up with one in the second. Thome, who singled and scored back in the first inning. Facing David Cone. Hard hit, but right at Sanchez. 1 pitch, 1 out. David Cone needs one of those economical innings with a minimum of pitches to help him get through this evening. Thursday, we're right back here for Game 2 of the American League Division Series. This time out, Jared Wright, the Indians, goes to the mound, his first postseason appearance, to take on Andy Pettitte and the rest of the Yankees. It's all the action beginning live at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, right here on Fox. Here's David Justice. Justice 0 for 1. Takes the ball. Amazing what David Justice did his first trip through the American League. Coming off a total reconstruction of his right shoulder. Bothered by bad left knee, a little twinge in that knee. It's funny to watch Justice in a postseason game wearing the Cleveland Indians uniform. The team he helped beat back in 1995. That is in the gap in right center. Got a chance and off the top of the wall. Misplayed by Williams in center, but Justice will hang on. Not only did Williams misplay it, made a poor throw, but it's just a one-out double.
David Justice, if it weren't for a bad left knee, would have been on third base then. He crushes this ball. It misses going out of the ballpark by about 3 feet. Looked like it hit right in the middle of the 8 on the 385 sign in right center field.
Heads up base running on David Justice's part as well. He rounded second base, took a big turn when he saw Bernie Williams throw, airmailing everybody on its way to third base. He came a few steps further. He saw the throw was offline. If that throw would have pulled Wade Boggs far enough off of third base, he probably would have tried to advance.
Now Justice at second with one out. Matt Williams pops the first pitch up. Girardi is there, has a play, and struggles, but makes it 2 out.
That was one of those throws from Bernie Williams where you use the Chrysler building as the cutoff building. There it is, David Justice, as Bob said, making the turn at second base. And then the throw from Bernie Williams, pulling Boggs off the bag, and David scampering back to second.
You could see him pick up the flight of the ball and then take a quick peek to see where Boggs was, and came a couple extra steps around second base until he realized Boggs was going to get the ball fairly close to third base.
First inning hero Sandy Alomar Jr. grounds to short. Jeter takes care of it. And Cone gets around a one-out double by David Justice. Top of the order coming up for New York. Big trail by 4. We are in the bottom of the third inning here in New York. Our overhead shots are courtesy of the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes, based in Pompano Beach, Florida. At the controls, Captain Jim Maloney from Vienna, Virginia. Bottom of the third inning, top of the lineup for the Yankees with Raines, Jeter, and O'Neill. Tim Raines flying to right his first time up. And the reason as to why Tim Raines is in the lineup at that DH spot, keep hearing Dottore going with the hot hand. After coming back, battling back from the hamstring trouble. Hit .321. Was all over the bases down the stretch for the Yankees in the month of September. The count 2-0.
See if Tim Raines takes here, down by 4.
The answer is no, and he is the first out here in the third inning. Right now for a Miller Lite game break. Let's go back to Chip Carey resting in our Hollywood studio.
Indeed, I am, Joe, Tim, and Bob. Great game in Atlanta today. Darryl Kyle pitched a magnificent ball game, made only a couple of mistakes. Ryan Presto, a solo home run, one of only 2 hits on the day, but Greg Maddux a little better. The Braves win it 2-1 tomorrow. It's Tom Glavine, and Mike Hampton has been spectacular in the second half for the Astros.
Thank you, Chip. You see any of that? You see Maddux?
Oh. You had to look quickly if you did. Talk about economy of pitches. He is just remarkable.
Jeter into left field, sending Giles back. 2 up, 2 down here in the third. And we'll bring in Paul O'Neill. 2 out, nobody on. He bats, and as O'Neill walks in, we talk about his outfield hits by direction. And this is a guy who you can almost play to hit the other way. Those 66 hits to the opposite field, leading the major leagues among big league hitters, going the opposite way for base hits. Yet left center field is wide open as O'Neill walks in with 2 out, nobody on. And going the other way, he fouls it down the left field line.
Yeah, see, that's not his long ball, but that is why his average is at 324 right here. A little off center, am I not? There you are, right there. He can handle that pitch away so well that pitchers really have to move the ball from one side of the plate to the other to get him out. He is one of the tougher outs against right-handed pitching in the American League.
That ball inside, and O'Neill could do nothing with it but pull it foul, strike 2. Is this more an indication, as you look at their defense, playing O'Neill to pull, is this more an indication of how Hershiser will pitch him?
I think you're absolutely right there. Hershiser perhaps going to go after him with a lot of off-speed pitches. As Tim mentioned, worked both sides of the plate, but particularly with 2 strikes, Paul O'Neill really thinks about going the opposite way, even on pitches that are inside.
Pops it up behind second base, shallow center. That's Grissom, and that's a 1-2-3 inning for Orel Hershiser. Settling in. 3 innings complete here at Yankee Stadium, Game 1. Indians lead by 4. Play 3, Yankees trail by 4. Indians with that big 5-run first inning lead 5-1. It'll be the bottom part of the order for Cleveland. Giles, Grissom, and Roberts.
You may get a look at Joe Girardi there on that catcher's mitt with 2 fingers out of the back of the glove. He was struck on the, there you get a real good look at it. He was struck on that middle finger with a pitch from David Wells that went the wrong way. Cracked a bone in the tip of his middle finger, and Yankees catching instructor Gary Tuck came up with a little thimble made out of plaster of Paris, as well as putting that finger out of the glove. You're used to seeing fielders put one finger, the index finger, out of their glove. Joe Girardi puts 2 fingers out to try to protect that broken bone.
Took that thimble right out of his Monopoly set. Brian Giles leading it off and unloading on that high delivery. Strike 2, 1-2.
Joe can either catch or sew now.
And can pass go and collect $200. Jorge Posada, boy, did he play well. Final month for the Yankees in place of Girardi. 2 balls, 2 strikes on Giles.
Yankees just had a terrific September. They won 17 of their last 22 games and their last 5 in a row coming into the playoffs. Matter of fact, the Yankees had a better record this year than they did last year. 96 wins this year, 92 in 1996.
And that's why it's a real shame that with all the junk that goes on around here, that lost in that shuffle is the fact that Joe Torre and these Yankees have overcome a lot of adversity here in 1997. He'll be the first to tell you this has been a much more difficult year.
Right.
Only to have a better season win total-wise, and here they are winning 5 going into the postseason to defend their title. And you just got a shot of the man that is completely in charge around here, Joe Torre. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Giles leading off, and a soft liner cut by Sanchez, 1 away. This week, America's most watched pregame show is back on the road, and they will be live from Green Bay. Then don't miss a key NFC Central battle. The 5-0 Buccaneers clash against the Packers or other regional action. Coverage begins at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, right here on Fox. Check local listings for the game and time in your area. Grissom down the right field line. O'Neill can't get to it, and Grissom will dig for second, turn and head for third. And we'll stop there with 1 out here in the 4th. Did you happen to watch Grissom out of the batter's box? He was tiptoeing down the first baseline, I think trying to use a little body English to keep that ball fair, and really didn't put his head down and run hard. I'm not so sure he wouldn't have circled the bases.
Well, I think another guy who was tiptoeing out to right field was Ray Sanchez. Instead of bolting out there, a little inexperience about playing here at Yankee Stadium. Sanchez eventually makes the play, trailing Paul O'Neill. But had he gone out there right away, perhaps he could have held Grissom to a double. A lot of times you just don't know the field and its unusual caroms, and now you have the infield in for the Yankees.
So the triple with one out, infield in. Roberts bloops one into center for a hit, and it's 6-1 Cleveland here in the fourth inning. The one-out triple, the RBI hit for Bip Roberts, making his presence felt in his first postseason game, and David Cone may be nearing the end of his night.
Mel Stottlemyre going out to talk to David to give Mendoza a chance to warm up.
Mendoza was up earlier in the ball game,
right,
so he shouldn't be too far away from being ready to come into this ball game.
56 pitches thrown by Cone. Here's Mendoza getting ready. Cone back in the first inning threw 31 pitches. Then in the second inning looked like he started to cut it loose a little more. Got around a double in the third, but cannot get around a one-out triple by Grissom here in the fourth. Indians have their 5-run lead back, and Stottlemyre back to the Yankee dugout. Here's Omar Vizquel, who dropped down a sacrifice bunt his first time, singled in the second. Bats with Roberts at first and one out. Even up by 5, you almost expect the Indians to run.
Oh, absolutely. Mike Hargrove said not only do they want to steal the bases, but they feel that if they force David Cone to go out of the slide step, that he's a much less effective pitcher.
Roberts has a big lead, but able to get back without a tag. Indians struggled trying to find someone to replace what Kenny Lofton gave them in that top spot in their lineup. Lofton now starring for Atlanta. Grissom, a solid year, but not Lofton-like. They end up bringing Bip Roberts here, and he has added a lot. Not going as Vizquel takes ball one low.
Yeah, the Cleveland Indians actually have better team speed now with Lofton gone, because when Kenny was with the Indians, you had Kenny, Lofton, and Vizquel sometimes. But now you've got Grissom, you've got Vizquel, you've got Roberts, and you've got Brian Giles.
1 on, 1 out. 1 ball, no strikes. 2-0 from Cone.
Case could be made that David threw those 2 balls low because Roberts was on at first base. Sometimes by staying at first, the threat of the stolen base is more effective than the stolen base itself.
Two 2-0 on Vizquel. Will Roberts go? Nope. And a strike, 2-1.
And also on the first pitch to Vizquel, you could see Joe Girardi coming out of his crouch, starting to get in a position to throw the ball, possibly impeding the view of the home plate umpire Tim Tashida. Yeah, that running game, or as you mentioned, the threat of a running game really changes the complexion of an inning.
I think he'll be off right here.
2 balls and a strike. So to Cone. Packed house here at Yankee Stadium. Awful quiet here in the 4th inning, and with good reason. 6-1 Cleveland. There he goes. The pitch low. The throw by Girardi is good, but not in time. And Roberts steals his second of the night.
Bip running on the first pitch, his first time on first. He waits 4 pitches to run here. The pitch was low. Not only does he steal second, but he gives Omar Vizquel a chance to hit with a count 3-1. Quick tag by Jeter. Very close play at second base. May have had the hand in there.
Jeter and Girardi thought they had him. Rick Reed did not. Now a full count on Omar Vizquel.
Yeah, Joe Girardi did a great job of getting rid of a tough pitch. You have to be wary of that ball going into the dirt. He picked it just above the ground. Got himself in good position, made a great throw.
Roberts in scoring position with one out. 3-2 to Vizquel. Will do it again. After Vizquel, it's Ramirez. And then you start down that row of Thome, Justice, Williams, Alomar. If you had to rank the Indians lineup, you might put it just behind Seattle. Team, the Cleveland Indians, pounding out 220 home runs this season. And now the walk to Vizquel. It's 2 on, 1 out, and that's going to be all for David Cone. David Cone gave it a shot here tonight. Hit by tendonitis down the stretch. Tried to battle through it. Had good intentions, but here in game one just did not have it. A 5-run first inning for Cleveland, capped on that 3-run homer. Crowd appreciates the effort of David Cone, but he gives way to the bullpen here in the 4th inning. Mendoza coming in for New York. We are only in the top of the 4th inning, and David Cone will sit the rest of this one out. First base coach for the Cleveland Indians is Davey Nelson. He's talking it over with Omar Vizquel about that play out at second base with Curtis running the bases, knocking Vizquel, who was trying to turn a double play.
Curtis didn't grab you, did he? But
that's what I thought he did. He went up in his hand and he pulled me down. I mean, he didn't win like
yeah, right. That's what I thought. I looked. I was watching, and when Bip flipped you the ball, and
like that.
Yeah. Did he touch you at all? Yeah, that's what I thought. Again.
Contact is made all the time when runners slide into shortstops or second baseman on double play attempts. And it was Omar Vizquel's opinion that he was interfered with by Chad Curtis.
Ground ball to the left side. Boggs to second, out. Over to first, out. How about that? Mendoza in. Ramirez, the inning-ending double play. Bottom of the 4th inning. Mendoza gets the Yankees out of trouble. A 5-run Indian lead.
This is what happened in the 2nd inning with the bases loaded and nobody out. Wade Boggs, the batter, a grounder to second baseman Bip Roberts. Chad Curtis running into Omar Vizquel. Vizquel thought he interfered, and the double play that ended the 4th inning for the Indians. Vizquel going in the more conventional way, and the throw by Ray Sanchez. I think that's what Vizquel wanted to do, jump over Curtis, and was very surprised when he went in standing up.
Of course, the defense and middle infielder has for a man coming in standing up, as we mentioned, is to put one right between his eyes.
That's right.
And Vizquel held on to the ball, chose not to let go of the ball. Perhaps if he would have tried to throw the ball and struck Chad Curtis, rather, the runner, maybe something would have been called at that point.
Maybe. Yeah, that's right.
The life of a middle infielder. Bernie Williams takes the ball. To me, it's just a good, tough play by Chad Curtis. If you're willing to go in standing up and you're willing to take one between the eyes,
you have nothing to lose.
You have nothing to lose. I think it's a good play. And you could see on the replay, Vizquel, the soundbite talking with Davey Nelson, saying he grabbed his arms. He didn't grab his arm.
No.
I just think it's a good play. Vizquel was pleading his case and obviously was frustrated that they couldn't turn the double play. It really didn't cost the Indians anything.
No.
Because Hershiser got out of it. All it did do was give Wade Boggs an RBI, and instead of just a double play ground out and a run scoring on the double play.
It may have been considered legal, but I will guarantee you the next time Chad Curtis comes into second base and Omar Vizquel is going to throw the ball, he's going to drop down and try to decapitate him.
There's a strike to Bernie Williams with Tino Martinez and Chad Curtis to follow.
And you do not forget those things.
No.
I learned the hard way with Andy Van Slyke in his days playing with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I learned that Andy Van Slyke never slides coming into home plate. Of course, that was after a hyperextended left elbow on one play and a broken nose on another one.
Is that what happened to you?
That was it.
Talking about Bob's elbow again, right?
Yeah. Bony elbow, is that what you're talking about?
Making that makeup person working awfully hard. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Williams. To Hopper to Bip Roberts. Williams now 0 for 1 with a walk and a run scored. Our Aflac trivia question. Who is the only player in postseason history to homer from both sides of the plate in the same game? For those of you with not much of a long-term memory, you can handle this one. 1 out, nobody on for Tino Martinez.
The hint is he is in uniform this evening.
Strike to Tino, who singled his first time up. That's strike 2. Tino Martinez with that RBI total of 141, the highest for the Yankees since Don Mattingly drove in 145 back in 1985.
And his 44 home runs, the highest by a first baseman of the Yankees since Lou Gehrig did it back in 1936.
Dangerous foul ball off to the right side. There's Chad Curtis. He will follow Tino Martinez, who tries to reach base for the second time tonight. Orel Hershiser again proving to everyone involved he knows how to handle a big lead. Teammates got him 5 in the first. They lead again by 5 at 6-1 here in the 4th.
Hershiser will change his pitching style over the course of a ball game. We saw him with the big lead right away, the 5-0 lead. He came back the next inning and was just throwing sinkers right down the heart of the plate. Now he's going back through the Yankees lineup another time. He's throwing a lot more off-speed pitches, a lot more breaking balls.
Martinez skies one to right. Will it carry out of here? Ramirez back. Got it. 4-run Cleveland lead.
Looked like a fat slider right here. A slider that did nothing but back up. And it sends Ramirez back up against the wall. He needed a ticket to feel this one.
I think they were probably trying to crowd Tino Martinez with that slider. Started over the inside part of the plate, break it down and in, hopefully get him to swing over it, but Hershiser left it out over the plate.
Now Chad Curtis is on with a 1-out base hit. The Yankees trying to come back here in the 4th inning. Martinez just got enough. Straight up and out. So Curtis has drawn a walk and singled, and maybe we'll get another look at Curtis and Vizquel out at second base.
It looked like Vizquel was looking at Curtis. Our camera following Omar's eyes. It looked like he was looking right at Chad Curtis.
Wade Boggs takes a strike. Yankees trying to climb back in. Down by 4 in the 4th. Vizquel, the shortstop for the Indians, on your left. 1 ball, 1 strike with Chad Curtis, the base runner, at first.
Interestingly, if the runner runs over the last 2 pitches, Vizquel would have been covering. Closed mouth as I've got it. Open mouth as you've got it. Closed mouth. He's got it if Curtis runs.
He wants to cover. Matt Williams tries to start a double play and does. Wow, what a play by Matt Williams, 3-time Gold Glove Award winner. Curtis trying to break up another, but it was Roberts this time, and he turned it to end the inning. Well, you would never know that the man on your right started this season with a Cleveland Indians. Man, is he introducing himself to these middle infielders.
Goes in with a very hard late slide. He doesn't hit the ground until he's even with third base. You can see Biff Roberts comes off the back of the bag to try to protect himself, and Chad Curtis is a one-man demolition derby out there tonight.
He made Omar Vizquel mad. Now, I don't think Biff cared. I don't think that bothers Biff. Do you?
It certainly didn't bother him completing the double play.
The brilliant turn of the double play. I mean, what a job by Biff Roberts to get rid of that ball on the money and still get Girardi.
And a good feed on the part of Matt Williams, the third baseman. When you know it's a slow developing double play, you realize that that runner is going to be closing in on the middle infielder. So you try to feed him the ball on the back of the bag so he can use the base to protect himself. After that, it's up to the second baseman to make the turn, and it was a fine turn by Biff Roberts.
Tomey pops one into left field for Chad Curtis. We know he can run the bases hard. He makes catches out in left field. I'll say this. Guys like Chad Curtis stay in the big leagues by playing the game that hard. He doesn't have a ton of talent. You got to do something, and he's playing hard. Our Aflac trivia question. The only player in postseason history to homer from both sides of the plate in the same game. Same guy did it twice. Bernie Williams, 1995 Division Series against Seattle, Game 3. And then last year in the Division Series against the Texas Rangers, Game 4. And as we mentioned already, 8 postseason home runs for Bernie Williams. This only his 21st postseason game. Justice went around, and the count 1-1 instead of 2-0.
Dave Justice with the big brace on the left elbow. I don't know about these things. You know, you get some hydraulics in that thing, you could generate a lot of power. You know, get some kind of a hydraulic pump in that thing and force you to straighten your arm out at the place of contact. You can hit that ball a long way.
I like it.
Not that he can't anyway, but getting closer and closer to robo baseball.
Terminator. Robo ball.
A ball and 2 strikes on Justice. 2-2. Justice wearing that because of the hyperextension of that throwing elbow on his left arm. You see a lot of guys in the big leagues now. Mark McGwire with the Cardinals. Gary Sheffield with the Florida Marlins wearing that in their front arm, not because of any injury, but to protect against inside pitches that end up too far inside. Still 2-2.
That is that nasty sinker from Mendoza. He, more than any other Yankee, relies on the sinker to get guys out. He does have a fine changeup. But watch this ball darting out of the strike zone. Heavy, and most guys are going to hit the top half of the ball as Justice did. Unfortunately for David, it was a foul ball.
He said in the final game of the season that we did in Detroit, Mendoza, the kind of guy who can come in and get the double play when the Yankees need it. Exactly what he did in the 4th inning, relieving David Cone. Albeit a nicely turned double play. Off the bat of Ramirez, Boggs to Sanchez to Martinez. 5-4-3. Pitch, rocketed, foul. That ball sounds good coming off his bat.
Well, that one sure did. That handcuffed the ball boy down the right field line. You can't play him to pull any more than he is. He's right against the bleachers.
Folks may be interested in knowing, well, what's the difference on a ball that sounds good and a ball that doesn't sound good? The one that sounds good is that fine click off the back part of the bat. Not that one.
That didn't sound good. Mendoza off the mound to make the play. 2 out. Game 2 of the ALCS 1977. You want to talk about play out at second base. That's Nettles, that's Randolph, and meet Mr. McRae. Run scored on the play, and get into these high-intensity games. A little more of that going on, and Willie Randolph found out the hard way.
Looked more like a middle linebacker jumping over the line of scrimmage right there. The whole thing was set up by Craig Nettles, unable to get the ball out of his glove swiftly enough, and that's what we were talking about, setting up that second baseman, try to give him a good ball to handle. In those days, you could roll block to break up a double play. The rules have been changed somewhat. You have to hit the ground before making contact with the second baseman if you're going to slide into second base.
Gray really known for that. Good hard base runner, and Randolph, a guy who played more games at second base for the Yankees than anyone in their history. 0-2 the count on Matt Williams. Now the third base coach for Joe Torre. 2 out, nobody on. Mendoza trying to retire the first 4 hitters that he faces here tonight. Mission accomplished. Handcuffing Matt Williams. Mendoza working well. Halfway through it. Yankees come to the plate down by 4.
1997 American League Division Series on Fox is brought to you by Miller Lite, who reminds you that anything can happen at Miller Tire. By Oldsmobile and your local Oldsmobile retailers. By Gillette Sensor Excel and the Gillette Series. Gillette, the best a man can get. And by Oracle, the company that's enabling the information age through network computing.
After a view of the Bronx from Manhattan, we take you inside Yankee Stadium. Riding our shots from above is the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes. 1960 when the Goodyear Blimps first began live sports coverage. 1960 Orange Bowl was the first event. Can you imagine the first guy that went up in a blimp? I'm going up in that thing. Base hit up the middle by Girardi, the number 8 hitter, and the Yankees try to get something started here in the 5th. Leadoff man is on for the second time tonight.
Hershiser appeared to be fooled by this ball, hit back through the middle, hit off the end of the bat. I think he thought it was hit harder than it really was, kind of stabbed at the ball after it was already by him. Yeah, anytime a pitcher sees a ball coming back through the box, your first instinct is self-preservation.
Assume it's hit hard.
That's right.
It was a leadoff hit. Now Ray Sanchez sports one foul. I think, again, you look at the job that Bob Watson has done as general manager of this New York Yankees team, and you have to be impressed with some of the late season additions, this being one of them. Ray Sanchez, earlier in the year, Chad Curtis. Great timing to get Curtis, and the injury bug hits Bernie Williams, and Curtis plays extremely well on an everyday basis. Strike 2 on Sanchez.
Sanchez really solidified the Yankees infield situation, especially around the bag at second base. Very quick hands, very strong arm for a second baseman. Able to make plays out there behind second base in short center field and still come up with a strong enough throw to get the batter.
That's down the left field line and trouble. Girardi shuts around second. They bring in the third and hold him there. It's a double for Sanchez, and here come the Yankees in the 5th.
After just missing a double the last time up, a hanging curveball from Oral Hershiser. Sanchez has never met a ball around the letters that he doesn't like. Hanger right there, folks. Major league hanging curveball.
And a nice play down in the corner by Brian Giles. He was out before the ball game today with the coaching staff, and they had a coach hitting fungos down in that corner to play these various caroms, and Giles plays it perfectly, gets the ball back in, and holds Girardi at third base.
Some of his teammates came out early just to heckle him down there as well. Second and third, nobody out. Rain into left center. That'll get a run home. Grissom makes the catch, tagging and scoring Girardi, and it's a 6-3 Cleveland lead. First RBI for Raines tonight. He drove home 38 during the regular season. Girardi got it started with a base hit into center.
When you have runners on at second and third and nobody out, you concede the run on third. What you're trying to do is keep the guy on at second base. That's what Hershiser did by having Raines hit the ball to center field.
Now Sanchez at second as Jeter takes the ball up and in. Especially with this lead. It's now a 3-run Indian lead in the 5th.
Yeah, for instance, a left-handed hitter like Raines, if he pulls the ball to right field, you not only score the runner, but you get the guy at second to third with 1 out.
Jeter late on that swing, 1-1.
Now, Hershiser appears to be having problems with the slider the last couple innings. That was a pitch that back in the 2nd and 3rd inning he went to with regularity when he needed a strike, when he needed a swinging strike. The last 2 innings he's had a lot of problems getting it on the outside part of the plate, hanging a lot of them up high. Boy, Sandy Alomar giving those signs so low in his crouch, you could probably see those from the Yankees bench. I mean, the signs are supposed to be up in your crotch, way up against your crotch, so that the opposing teams can't pick them up from the bench. Look at that.
Of course, he does have his right foot there, but you're right. I mean, catchers are trained to give the signs right against the groin area. But Sandy, those long fingers, he's closer to the ground than he is to his thighs.
A ball and 2 strikes as Hershiser tries to figure out a way to get Jeter. Jeter 0 for 2. Just missed inside, 2-2. Look at the outfield hits by direction for Jeter, and another guy that likes to go the opposite way.
Especially with 2 strikes, Joe.
A lot of hits to right. Runner at second, 1 out. Into center field, a hit. Here comes Sanchez. They hold him at third. Down to second is Jeter at second and third.
Outstanding base running by Derek Jeter and a poor throw by Marquise Grissom. We were kidding about Bernie Williams' throw earlier, using the Chrysler Building as the cutoff man. Well, Marquise Grissom throws it over the cutoff man, allowing Jeter to go to second without hesitation. You have a 3-run lead. You cannot make this throw, allowing the guy who hit the ball to get to second base.
You definitely want to keep that double play in order. The ball got to Grissom so quickly in center field that Willie Randolph had no choice but to hold the runner at third base. Get the ball back into the cutoff man.
You can score at a single and great base running. Hershiser is gone in the 5th. Mormon, the left-hander, will enter. Well, guys, what a good at-bat by Derek Jeter. He KOs Hershiser here in the 5th inning, and no chance for a win tonight for Orel Hershiser.
Here's the pitch-by-pitch, a hanging breaking ball for a ball. Takes a little off a fastball. That pitch is called a strike. That pitch is called a ball. Turned the entire at-bat around for Derek Jeter. Leans out over the plate, strokes that ball into center field. As he mentioned, heads up base running to advance into scoring position on the bad throw from Marquise Grissom.
The numbers for Hershiser, still responsible for runners at second and third. And Mike Hargrove, the manager of the Indians, told us before the game, if I make a mistake with Orel, it will be from taking him out too early. It will not be from leaving him in too long.
That's exactly what he said, and this is an ideal time to bring in the left-hander, particularly when you have Bernie Williams, who is a switch hitter, but you have Tino Martinez behind him.
Paul O'Neill, the left-hander, first up, second and third, 1 out. Then Williams, then Tino Martinez. So a big chance here for Alvin Mormon in his first ever postseason experience. Second and third, 1 out. Blocked by Alomar.
Let's see Paul O'Neill there whispering to himself at home plate. He's had problems with lefties throughout his career, not so much lately, but early in his career, left-handers gave him a lot of problems.
Not even close, 2-0.
Well, Sandy Alomar has saved 2 runs, blocking 2 very tough pitches down in the dirt. Mormon trying to go after O'Neill with breaking balls. Both of them in the dirt. Both of them nicely blocked by Sandy Alomar. You see that pitch hits out in front of home plate. Tim mentioned earlier, don't use the glove to catch it. Try to block it with that chest protector.
Just a little floater, and O'Neill almost came out of his high tops going after that pitch, just waiting, and it's fouled for a 2-1 count.
That was a get-me-over breaking ball. This one, you're just trying to throw it for a strike, took a little bit off, ball hung up over the inside corner, and Paul was so far out in front he couldn't do anything but pull a foul.
Second and third, one out. A base hit could make it a one-run game. Bernie Williams is next. Bases loaded. Hargrove with absolutely zero hesitation as he heads out of the Indians dugout. He pulled 39-year-old Oral Hershiser, who has been as good as any pitcher in the history of this game in the fifth inning, with a 3-run lead. Handed it to Alvin Mormon. Alvin Mormon handed a walk to Paul O'Neill. Bases loaded for New York. Well, as Yankee Stadium is starting to erupt here in the fifth inning, we remind you that tomorrow you can catch more exciting action of the division series when ESPN brings you Game 2 between the Astros and the Braves at 1 Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and the Giants and Marlins at 4 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Then at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on NBC, it's Game 1 of the American League Division Series between the Orioles and the Mariners. It's all coming up tomorrow. And then remember, we are back here Thursday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, live for Game 2 of this series as Eric Plunk takes over, getting ready to face Bernie Williams.
Well, it was pretty apparent that Mike Hargrove did not like what he saw from Alvin Mormon. Immediately signaled to the bullpen, and Eric Plunk, the right-hander. Mormon wasn't really close. When you bring in a lefty to go through a string of left-handed batters in the order, if you don't look like you're going to be able to do it against the first one, there's no reason to leave the guy in there to face the next couple. See that Pepto-Bismol and Maalox right behind Alvin Mormon. Appearances like that will make managers go to the antacids.
Bernie Williams will get his chance against former Yankee Eric Plunk. The tying runs are on. We're only in the fifth inning. And after a 5-run first and a 6-1 lead, it's starting to slip away from the Indians here in the fifth.
Historically, Bernie Williams is a better hitter against left-handed pitching. That certainly adds into the mix. As a career, he has hit 53 points better against left-handers than right-handers, but this does put him on the left side. If he does hit a ground ball, a better chance to beat it out, prevent the double play.
6-3 Cleveland. Bases loaded, 1 out. Williams up now. Martinez on deck. Strike 1.
That was a nasty slider to start him off. Bernie Williams, American League teams try to jam him. They try to crowd him with hard stuff from the left side. And that's what Plunk did with that first slider.
Down and in, 1 ball, 1 strike. Ray Sanchez, the runner at third. Jeter with a hit and good base running in the inning at second. O'Neill at first. And Hershiser now, just like you, a spectator.
Problem with pitching guys inside. If you miss inside, that's long ball in this ballpark.
Third base side for Williams. 2 out. An enormous out for the Indians to get Bernie Williams after Plunk fell behind on the count. But there's one more big one to get.
Well, it looked like Bernie Williams got a good pitch to hit, just got under it too much, lifted it foul on the third base side. Matt Williams was just enough room over there. Some additional seats have been added for the postseason. And he's right up against him as he makes the catch.
Now Tino Martinez, who has singled and homered. Bases loaded, 2 out. 91 miles per hour from Plunk, up and in. Go-ahead run at the plate for New York. 1-1.
You may have seen that 91-mile-an-hour reading on Plunk's first fastball to Tino Martinez. It's a little deceiving because he throws that four-seam fastball usually up high in the strike zone. It appears to pick up speed, maybe even hop a little bit at the end, unlike a sinking fastball.
Down the line, but foul.
Tino Martinez looking for one speed. He got it, but yanked it foul. Plunk is throwing awfully hard. I agree with you, Bob. That is deceptive as far as that radar reading. If you're a hitter up there, it looks quicker than 91 miles an hour.
Martinez set up at 1-2.
Hot zone to Tino Martinez. You can pitch him up and in. You can pitch anybody up and in. But if you leave it out here, that's his hot zone. And that was close to the pitch that he just yanked foul.
The 1-2 from Plunk.
Notice Sandy Alomar said, we're not going back inside with that one.
And I think that pitch may be to set up a backdoor breaking ball.
Bases loaded, 2 out. The breaking ball down and in for a full count, and the runners will go. Right down the middle. Eric Plunk comes in to bail out Hershiser and the Indians in the 5th. Yankees get only 1 and trail by 3.
Yankees miss a golden opportunity to break through and score some runs. They trail the Indians 6-3. A tremendous pitch by Eric Plunk. He'd been working Tino Martinez up and in with a fastball, down and in with a slider. You may recall when he got to 2 strikes, he missed up out of the strike zone with a fastball. I mentioned it may be setting up a backdoor breaking ball, one that starts off the plate, comes across the outside corner of the plate, absolutely freezes Tino Martinez. A very gutsy pitch to throw, but a very successful pitch.
And the Yankees get only the 1 run on 3 hits in the inning and a walk. A double mixed in by Sanchez, and the Yankees had their chance with Bernie Williams and Tino Martinez not to be in the 6th inning. Sandy Alomar Jr. leads it off with the Indians leading 6-3. It will be Alomar, Giles, and Grissom, the bottom 3 against Mendoza, who has been terrific. Came on in a jam in the 4th inning, got a ground ball, double play ball off the bat of Ramirez, a 1-2-3 5th inning. Fighting back a smile as he works in the 6th. And why not? 1 ground ball after another. Jeter takes care of Alomar, 1 away. Don't forget, fans, tune in to Game 4 of the American League Championship Series for the $1 million Gillette Strike Zone Challenge, where 1 fan will have the opportunity to throw a strike for $1 million. I can't read that without thinking of Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. I'm sorry. Well, that will pay you $1 million. Strike 1 from Mendoza as he works it into Brian Giles, who is 0 for 2. 268 during the regular season. 1-1.
What a job by Eric Plunk. The Yankees had scored that 1 run to inch him closer. And then even another marker in that inning would have been a very big psychological boost for the Yankees.
Tino Martinez takes care of Brian Giles. 2 out. Let's go back to Chip Carey in Hollywood for a Miller Lite game break.
Joe, Bob, and Tim, great game down in Florida at the Fish Tank. Tie game, bottom of the 9th inning. Edgar Renteria singles home the game winner. Charles Johnson tallies the game-winning run. The Marlins win it 2-1. They lead that series 1-0. Back to you in New York.
All right, Chip, thanks. Here at 6-3 Cleveland. Mendoza trying to go through the first 2 2/3, the perfect route, facing Grissom and getting ahead with strike 1. Up the middle, Jeter times it to his left, takes care of Grissom, and the Indians are gone in the 6th inning. It will be Curtis, Boggs, Girardi. 6, 7, and 8 for the Yankees, down by 3. Ty Cobb will lead it off in the bottom of the 6th inning. Cleveland out in front by 3. This copyrighted telecast presented by authority of the Commissioner of Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. I'm just kidding. It's Chad Curtis. He's walked, he's singled, he's made Bip Roberts and Omar Vizquel very, very angry. Strike 1 on a breaking ball from Eric Plunk. What a job Plunk did coming in with the bases loaded, getting Bernie Williams on a pop-up, striking out Tino Martinez, looking to end that 5th inning. Oh, and 2.
Talking about that half inning, as you see the play in the 2nd inning of Chad Curtis running into Omar Vizquel and then barreling into Bip Roberts on an attempt to break up a double play 2 innings later.
0 and 2 as Curtis stays alive.
How many times this season do you think the Yankees have had runners on at 2nd and 3rd and 1 out with Paul O'Neill, Bernie Williams, and Tino Martinez coming up and not score?
7.
7, huh? You got it right on your shirt sleeve, right?
Tino pounded one into the upper deck with foul and eventually struck out. 0-2 to Curtis. Easy for Jim Thome. Curtis is retired for the first time this evening. Look at the Yankee box score. DH Raines is hitless, but he has driven in a run with a sac fly back in the 5th. Jeter has a hit in that 5th inning. Martinez went deep, but not at the right time for the Yankees. He did hit the home run back in the 4th inning. In the bottom of the lineup, double by Ray Sanchez in the 5th inning. And that rally started with a base hit up the middle by Girardi, the number 8 hitter. Here's Boggs.
I want to tell you, Eric Plunk is blowing tonight. This is about as hard as he can throw.
Great name for a pitcher. Pitching coach out in Denver with the Colorado Rockies by the name of Frank Plunk. At times appropriately named, and Eric Plunk. As Boggs shoots one to center, Grissom cannot get to it in time. A 1-out hit for Boggs. He's on base. His first hit of the night.
Plunk has come a long way in his career. Of course, he pitched here for the Yankees for 3 seasons, but early in his career with the Oakland Athletics, he was just as likely to walk a batter an inning as strike out a batter an inning. Very erratic, not only with the fastball, didn't really have a breaking ball he could throw over the plate, but he's proved in a very short period of time tonight that he's got command of that breaking ball. He's mixed in a couple of changeups as well as that high 4-seam fastball.
Here's Girardi. Williams, the only play at first. 2 outs. Told you about the games coming up tomorrow on other networks. We'll remind you that Thursday we're right back here for Game 2 of the American League Division Series. Jared Wright, hard-throwing young right-hander, the rookie, goes to the mound for the Indians to take on Andy Pettit and the Yankees. Catch all the action beginning live at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, Thursday night on Fox. Andy Pettit had another strong year. Pettit an 18-game winner. Jared Wright called up, won 8 games for the Indians. Talk about a devastating injury to the Cleveland Indians when John Smiley went down with a broken arm.
Oh, yeah.
How long had they been trying to get a left-hander in that rotation with experience, quality left-hander? They finally got him. Then he gets hurt toward the end of the season. This is down the right field line and fair. An RBI single for Sanchez. Boggs scores, and all of a sudden it's just a 2-run game. Ray Sanchez, the number 9 hitter, is 2 out of 3.
A double to left his last time up, and a fastball off the end of the bat, curling toward the line. Ramirez can't get to it. And Sanchez with another hit. Ramirez with a strong throwing arm. Fortunately for the Indians, that ball caroming right back to Ramirez, and he's able to hold Sanchez to first base.
Really good play by Ramirez.
Yeah.
That ball likely a double, but it's just a single. And here's Tim Raines. Ball 1 on Tim, who hit a sac fly to center his last time up. He's 0 for 2. He is the tying run at the plate. Jeter would be next. One and one.
Sanchez, although he is a middle infielder, and normally you think of those guys as being quick on the bases, Sanchez is a good base runner, but not a good base stealer. 0 for 4 this year with the Yankees. Stole very few bases in his time with the Chicago Cubs as well.
It's kind of the story of the Yankees as a team. They're a good base running team, but they're not a fast base running team.
And because of that, when Joe Torre came to the Yankees last year, early on, everybody talking about how he brought a National League style of baseball to this Yankee team as Paul Ossenmacher gets ready with an eye on Paul O'Neill. He's in the hole. He would follow Jeter if the Yankees try to rally further here in the 6th. Low to range. It's 2 and 1.
If Sanchez had better speed, Eric Plunk is a good pitcher to steal against. When he comes set in his stretch position, the first thing that moves are his hands. The throwing hand and the glove start their movement upward before he picks up that front leg and starts his delivery to home plate.
He's 6'5", and most tall pitchers are good to run on.
1 on, 2 out, range, hits it to right. We're tied. Strike 1 on Jeter. First career postseason home run. How did that feel to a guy that first came up with the Expos in 1979? Joe Torre again with that great instinct. Putting this lineup together. That's foul in strike 2 last year. He sat Tino Martinez while he was struggling, and Cecil Fielder was such a big part of their World Series win. He pulled the right string there. Goes with a hot hand range here in game 1 as the DH. We've got to have his bat in the lineup. He ties the game with a 2-out, 2-run homer. And a 5-run lead, which the Indians once enjoyed, is now gone. Jeter into left field. Giles back at the wall. Yankees lead. On this swing in the 6th, the Yankees take a 1-run lead.
Bronx Bombers once again.
A 3-home-run night. Tim Raines tied it with that cut. Jeter, the second-year player, puts New York out in front. And the Indians need a new pitcher here in the 6th. Told you not to touch that dial. For all that great work that Eric Plunk gave the Indians in the 5th. The Yankees get him with 2 out here in the 6th inning. Overtake the Indians, lead 7-6. And here's the left-hander, Assenmacher. Strike 1 on O'Neill. O'Neill 0 for 2 with a walk. 5-0 after a half inning. 6-1 after 3.5. A 4-run 6th inning and a 7-6 New York lead. Strike 2. How about that swing by Jeter?
Well, we talk about guys getting extension on a ball to hit a home run. Watch Derek Jeter's right arm. His elbow is right in against his body as he pulls through. Watch the right arm on contact. Look at that right elbow is in the middle of his stomach. That is no extension whatsoever, but he gets the head of the bat on that fastball and drives it out of here.
Now the 0-2 to O'Neill is smoked to center. Grissom back. back-to-back. And an 8-6 New York lead.
Fastball out over the plate to Paul O'Neill. I think one thing to keep in mind in this inning was the 2-out opposite field base hit by Ray Sanchez, driving in the 4th run of the ball game, allowing Raines to tie it, Jeter to put him ahead, O'Neill to put him 2 runs ahead. That was a huge hit by Ray Sanchez. If you don't get the bloop, you don't get the blast.
I showed you earlier, O'Neill is a very good opposite field hitter, led the major leagues in base hits to the opposite field. This one to straightaway center field here in Yankee Stadium, and pretty much of a no-doubter. Marquise Grissom gave it an effort, ran back to the track, but no chance.
The Indians just stunned over on their dugout bench, posting with Hershiser on the mound. And a complete collapse here in the 6th inning. Williams is hit on the back foot by the pitch, and he goes down to first.
Well, that'll get a reaction from the fans, but that was actually a breaking ball that got away from Paul Ossenmacher and hit Bernie Williams in the back foot.
Right. That was a slider. Bernie couldn't get out of the way of it.
If you're going to try to make a statement after giving up back-to-back-to-back home runs, it's not going to be with a breaking ball in the foot.
No. Nope.
The 9th man to bat in the inning is Tino Martinez. Ball 1 from Ossenmacher. One time he was retired was by Plunk with the bases loaded, struck out looking on a 3-2 pitch. Big swing, 1-1.
You can see Sandy Alomar cringe there after that foul ball hit him in the mitt. I know Joe Girardi was injured on a pitch that was not swung at. He just caught it wrong in the glove. This is how you get injured in those fingers. You can see that ball hitting well up in the fingertips of that catcher's mitt, probably bent those fingers back a little bit. That catcher's mitt and the wrist is not meant to move in that direction.
Two balls and a strike.
Winners laugh and tell jokes.
Off the end of the bat, down the left field line for Brian Giles. And the Indians have to be wondering what hit them here in the 6th inning. 5 runs, 3 home runs, back for the 7th after this from your local Fox station. Welcome back to the 7th inning here at Yankee Stadium with the Yankees out in front now by 2, and that 5-run Cleveland first inning lead is but a distant memory for the Indians as Pip Roberts leads it off against a guy who won't get a lot of ink but should, Ramiro Mendoza. He kept his teammates in this game, and his teammates have rewarded him. Roberts, Vizquel, Ramirez, top of the lineup for the Indians. 3-0 from Mendoza. Three and 1. David Cohn lasted only 3 1/3 innings. Since then, it's been Mendoza. Full count. Mendoza's retired all 7 Indian hitters he has faced. Roberts trying to reach base for the 3rd time. Walked, stole a base, and scored in the 1st. Drove home a run and stole a base in the 4th. still 3-2.
Mendoza just continues to hammer that sinker in there. He starts it either inside and tails it back over the heart of the plate, or starts it over the heart of the plate, tails it down and away. Here comes another one.
Base hit for Bip Roberts, and here come the Indians right back with a leadoff single to start the 7th. And Roberts is on base for the 3rd time tonight. Talk about a big late season pickup. Here's a look at our game summary. Cleveland, a 5-run first inning on 3 hits, which for the most part concluded with an Alomar 3-run home run. The Yankees with 5 runs on 5 hits. Back-to-back-to-back home runs by Raines, Jeter, and O'Neill. Cone did not get through 4. Hershiser did not get through 5. So while we came in talking about Cone and Hershiser, it's now a battle of the bullpens and a slugfest here in Game 1. Tying run at the plate for the Indians as Vizquel takes low. Ball 1.
Bip Roberts already with 2 stolen bases, and a guy like Mendoza easier to run on than most pitchers, because in order to be effective, he's got to keep the ball down, and those are the toughest balls for catchers to handle when guys run. Heavy sinkers.
Roberts starts and stops on strike 1 to Vizquel. Omar tonight has dropped down a sacrifice bunt, singled and walked. Top 2 in this lineup. They have been a handful for the Yankees tonight.
Since that base hit in the early innings by Vizquel to left field, Chad Curtis has come in about 5 steps, properly planting shallow.
Over the outside corner for strike 2.
A lot of times you do that with the pitcher, too. A guy like Mendoza, he's tough to lift. He's tough to hit with any authority the other way. Guys like that, you do play more shallow.
Vizquel set up at 1-2 and now gone.
He finished him off with that good changeup that Joe Torre told us Mendoza had. First pitch misses low, sinker, another sinker, and the changeup gets it.
Well, the whole key to selling that changeup is to throw it the same way you do your fastball. Rely on the grip of the ball to take enough speed off to fool that hitter and fool him with that arm speed. Looks like a fastball, floats up to the plate.
Now with Roberts on and 1 out, Manny Ramirez, who is more than capable of tying this game with 1 swing, digs in. Drove home a run back in the 1st. He was the first Cleveland hitter to face Mendoza when he entered in the 4th inning with 2 on, 1 out. Grounded into a 5-4-3 double play. Got under it, into center, Bernie Williams, 2 out. And while we talk about the top 2 hitters in the lineup for Cleveland, we look at their box score. Manny Ramirez now 1 for 4 with that fly ball out. Tomey, who is coming up here, which will prompt the pitching change. 1 out of 3, and then Justice. So the top 2 left-handed bats coming up for Cleveland. Well, can you say enough? Can you say enough about the job Ramiro Mendoza did here in Game 1? 3 1/3 innings, no runs, 1 hit.
And he has added new meaning to the Mendoza line.
That line is the line that has kept the Yankees in this game to the point where their offense exploded in the 6th inning. A 5-run 6th inning, and Mendoza's now the pitcher of record for the Yankees as he hands it over to another big part of the Yankees' success this year, Mike Stanton.
There's so many times those middle relievers, they get nothing other than innings pitched. They very rarely get a decision. They don't get a save.
Roberts was almost caught. He was frozen and just got back ahead of the tag of Martinez.
He actually wasn't really fooled. He was going back all the way, but Stanton has a very quick move to first base. A lot of left-handers will give you that high leg kick and hang in the air and try to make the runner commit. Mike Stanton, a very quick step move to first base.
Thome hit 40 in the regular season, but a weak ground ball to the left side. Boggs tried to flip it, thought better of it, took too much time, and Thome is on at first. It's 2 on, 2 out, and the Indians have life in the 7th.
I'm not sure if Wade Boggs had come up throwing that he would have had Jim Thome at first base. But by taking that little fake shovel towards second base, give Biff Roberts credit for hurrying to second. Once Wade made that move, no chance to get Thome.
Boggs was fooled a little bit by that ball. It appeared to hit something in that right-handed batter's box and kicked towards the middle of the infield. Boggs appeared to hold position initially and then broke to his left. Really got caught out there in no man's land.
It's an infield single for Thome. It's the start of a rally, the Indians hope, as they bring David Justice to the plate. Justice 1 out of 3 with a double. Facing the lefty Stanton, and Girardi just saved a wild pitch.
That was a terrific play by Joe Girardi, the catcher. Every catcher has to go that far to his right. He's sitting outside, has to backhand it. That's one of those 89-mile-an-hour sinkers that just tears the hand up. Fine play by Girardi.
2-0.
You never anticipate a guy throwing his fastball that far away from the target. It happens occasionally with a breaking ball or a split finger, but on a fastball, a major league pitcher is usually going to be somewhere around the target. He missed completely across home plate.
2 on, 2 out for Cleveland. Now 3-0 on David Justice. John Hart, the general manager of the Indians, helped steer this Cleveland club to 3 straight Central Division titles in the American League. Seen his team give up a 5-run lead, but hoping for something here in the 7th. 2 on, 2 out, and a strike to make it 3-1. The go-ahead run at the plate for the Indians. 2 on, 2 out. 7th inning, 8-6 New York. That ball trying to get out of play, and it will. Full count. Jeff Nelson, the right-hander, getting ready in case this inning continues past Justice, with Matt Williams on deck. Roberts and Thome, each with singles here in the 7th. They will go on the 3-2 pitch to Justice. Just missing for ball 4 to load the bases. And with Williams coming up, Joe Torre comes out of the Yankee dugout. An infield hit by Thome. A walk to Justice. And Joe Torre makes that long, slow walk out to the mound with Matt Williams coming up. The handoff, and Jeff Nelson will be on the mound when we come back. We are in the top of the 7th inning, and the Indians trying to answer the Yankees. The Yankees trying to hang on to an 8-6 lead. The reason they are out in front in the 6th inning for the first time in postseason history, back-to-back-to-back home runs. The 4th time, 3 home runs in 1 inning, and the last time the Yankees did it last year in the ALCS, the Yankees at Baltimore, Game 5. Home run by Raines tied it. Home run by Jeter put the Yankees out in front. This the insurance tally, and they are going to need all of it, it looks like, with the bases loaded, 2 out. And Matt Williams coming up. Not only back-to-back-to-back in the 6th inning, but a 4-homer night for the Yankees. And here's Jeff Nelson with the bases loaded, 2 out, in to face Matt Williams.
And it's very important for Nelson to stay ahead of Williams so he can use the slider out of the strike zone. Matt does become a little anxious when he's behind in the count. But if he gets ahead of Nelson, it's another story.
Bases loaded, 2 out. Into right field for O'Neill. Well hit at the track at the wall to end the inning. 300+ feet away, and Nelson comes in, throws 1 pitch. And the Indians leave the bases loaded. It's time to stretch. Yankees lead by a couple. Bottom of the 7th inning, they bat. I said going to break. It's time to stretch. Who am I kidding? These people haven't sat down for about an hour and a half.
The most important thing when you come to a Yankee game is to wear comfortable shoes, because you're going to spend most of the game on your feet.
It's a similar game, as a matter of fact, as the last game of the World Series, the last postseason game that we were, when we were here. You mentioned Wade Boggs riding that horse. Yankees clinching it here against Atlanta. No less excitement here tonight.
Booth starts to shake, and I'm here to tell you, I don't know how to fly one of these things. So we go along. This Yankee Stadium crowd, they were charged up before the game got underway during the introductions. This is the division series. The Indians jumped out to that 5-0 first inning lead, and then 6-1 after 3½. The Yankees coming back with single runs in the 4th, 5th, and 5 in the 6th inning. The Indians just missing a chance in the top of this inning, leaving the bases loaded with Williams at the plate. Ball and 2 strikes on Chad Curtis.
Appeared to me that Matt just got it off the end of the bat a little bit. That slider biting away. He hit it away, just missing a grand slam home run.
Mike Jackson getting ready for the Indians in their bullpen. Two and 2 on Curtis, and Assenmacher will not only have Curtis, but Boggs, who waits on deck. Wade a big hit in that 5-run 6th inning. Curtis checked his swing, and the count is full.
Assenmacher's best pitch, as you may have gathered by now, is this big sweeping breaking ball. He'll throw it at a variety of different speeds. He throws a little harder, it breaks a little less. When he takes some off, it breaks a large distance. Curtis able to check his swing that time. Very tough pitch to lay off of.
From 0-2 to 3-2. Chad Curtis got an awful big night for the Yankees. A leadoff walk. Talked about Matt Williams and that swing and the first pitch that he saw from Nelson. He just missed it.
Well, you can see that flat slider breaking out over the outside corner of the plate, and I think you're right, Tim. He just did hit it off the end of the bat enough that didn't get the kind of carry necessary to get it out of here to right field, but he does run Paul O'Neill right into the wall. But he had a chance. The short porch here at Yankee Stadium, 314 down that right field line. Anything in the air has got a chance.
Wade Boggs bunting. Foul for strike 1.
Talk about the end of the bat. That slider is going away. The fat part of the bat about 4 or 5 inches down. And as you can see right there, that's the end of the bat type of swing that we were talking about. Matt Williams, a very strong hitter, and even when he doesn't hit it on the sweet spot, he can still hit it out, and almost did against the Yankees then.
He wasn't going to give Jeff Nelson a chance to get ahead of him. We talked about that slider, the bad slider, the one that breaks out of the zone that's so tough to lay off of. Matt Williams wasn't going to let him get to that point. Swung at the first pitch he saw.
Curtis, who during the regular season stole 12, was caught 6 times. He's at first, and the Indians still expect the bunt from Boggs. Ball and a strike.
In his days in the National League, teams would not waste a sacrifice bunt against Paul Ossenmacher. He had a dreadful move to first base and a very slow delivery to home plate. He's quickened his delivery to home plate considerably. Much tougher to run against now.
And evidently tough to bunt, at least for Boggs. I don't think Wade looked too comfortable trying to bunt that pitch up and in, 1-2.
Here's a guy with over 2,800 hits. He got the 2,800 on a triple in Detroit the last weekend of the season. He doesn't bunt to sacrifice much, I'll tell you. It looked like even with 2 strikes, Wade Boggs was going to sacrifice again. He had that movement toward Ossenmacher.
That game of cat and mouse, you can never really be sure. I mentioned Ossenmacher, a very poor move to first, very easy to read as a runner, very easy to read as a batter as well.
Swinging, and the little fly ball to Giles in left, so Boggs could not get the bunt down and therefore does not advance the runner. Curtis still at first with 1 out for Girardi and Sanchez.
Are you telling me you have a live extraterrestrial running a loop?
Millennium. It all starts Friday at 8, 7 Central.
Paul Ossenmacher with the visitor.
That visitor is Mike Hargrove, and Ossenmacher will visit the shower. With Girardi and Sanchez, a couple of right-handed hitters coming up. We saw Mike Jackson earlier getting loose. Ossenmacher will exit, and it will be Mike Jackson out of the bullpen for the Cleveland Indians. These fans here at Yankee Stadium were dancing and singing and having fun earlier. But here in the bottom of the 7th inning, they lead by 2. Bottom of the 7th inning here at Yankee Stadium. Yankees out in front by 2. Playing Super Freak on the PA system here at the stadium, so a perfect time for our Goodyear blimp. Our thanks to the many spectacular overhead shots to Captain Maloney and the crew. The Goodyear blimp Stars and Stripes, based out of Pompano Beach, Florida. 1 on, 1 out. Jackson brings that nasty stuff in from the Cleveland bullpen and misses inside with ball 1.
Mike Jackson's been one of the best setup men in baseball for years. Features a couple different fastballs, a 4-seamer that will ride up high, a sinker that will tail back into a right-hander, but his best pitch is that devastating slider. Girardi, ground ball to the Bipper. Oh, little flip, a bare hand, as good as you'll see. Bibb Roberts from the glove to Omar Vizquel with the bare hand, and then the pickup by Thome at the other end.
With Chad Curtis bearing down. Watch him get down. We said it would happen. He tried to do it then.
The double play. We're through 7 here at Yankee Stadium.
Remember back in the 2nd inning when Chad Curtis ran into Omar Vizquel, standing up right there. No interference was called. Payback time. Bare hand, he just misses him. And had Bibb Roberts given him a better toss, I think the throw, Vizquel's throw that is, would have been centered more. Curtis coming in high again.
And I'll say this for Curtis, he wasn't scared. I mean, he went in standing up again to try to break up the double play. And if Vizquel drilled him, he drilled him.
Yep. I think Omar really conscious of that. As a matter of fact, so conscious his throw to first base was low to Tino Martinez.
How many times do you get an opportunity 3 times in a ball game to break up a double play?
Yeah.
Tells you how busy Chad Curtis has been in this game tonight.
Charlie Hayes is now busy. He takes over at third base for Wade Boggs. Defensive replacement as we get into the 8th inning. Yankees out in front of Cleveland, 8-6. Sandy Alomar Jr. on 0-2. Through the hole and into left, and Alomar is on for the 2nd time tonight with a leadoff hit. A Miller Lite game break. Back to Chip Carey in Hollywood.
All right, Joe, Tim, and Bob, great game at Yankee Stadium. Great game in Atlanta earlier today. Key play, top of the 8th, time run at guess what? Greg Maddux gets out of trouble. 9 innings, 7 hits, only 1 run. Braves win Game 1. Big key in the division series, the team that wins Game 1 has won 6 of the 8 series all time.
That is an important note as we go along here at Yankee Stadium. Mariano Rivera getting ready in the Yankee bullpen. Tying run at the plate, it's Giles. 8-6 Yankees, 8th inning, and ball 1 to Bryan, who is 0 for 3. But he hit 17 home runs during the regular season. To the right side, Sanchez. Heck of a play. Good pickup by Jeter. 1 out.
Well, we mentioned earlier Sanchez with a strong throwing arm for a second baseman, and he showed it right here, even though he was off balance. Going to his left to make the play. Second baseman knows where that runner is going from first to second. He realizes he's got time. The underhanded throw to Jeter. Great pickup by the shortstop. No chance for 2. Great play to get the lead man.
Tell you, Bob, the way I saw that, that was a good play on a bad play. I think Sanchez has got to go to first base and get the sure out. Taking a chance like that, if Jeter bobbles the ball, it looks awfully foolish on Sanchez's part. But it was a brilliant play by both Ray, but as good a play at least by Jeter.
The 2 middle infielders here tonight on each side. Roberts and Vizquel for Cleveland. Jeter and Sanchez for the Yankees, as involved in this game as any tandem. Jeter hit the go-ahead home run in the 6th inning. Sanchez hit the double to extend the inning, and this foul ball off the bat of Grissom takes the glove, I should say the mask, off the face of Girardi.
Bring back some nice memories, Bob.
Oh, they aren't nice memories. They're definitely memories, but they're not nice.
Everybody thinks when the ball hits the mask on a foul tip that it doesn't hurt. Well, it does. Spins a cap around.
Spins your eyeballs around sometimes, too.
1 on, 1 out. And a little pop-up to the right side. Grissom now 1 out of 4. This crowd here of 57,398 packed into Yankee Stadium, the largest crowd here since they remodeled Yankee Stadium in 1976. 74th anniversary of this ballpark. This is the 22nd year since that renovation in 76. 1 on, 2 out. Bip Roberts, he's been on base 3 times tonight. Two out of 3 plus a walk. A couple of stolen bases and ball 1 from Nelson.
Everybody talks about the Baltimore Oriole bullpen, but it was the New York Yankee bullpen with the lowest earned run average in the American League this year.
Not only 3.22 for the season, Tim, but since July 1st, 2.65.
Which is about a half a run better than anybody else. And that's a huge margin.
Boggs earlier this season was a relief pitcher for the Yankees. I have a feeling that not many remember that, but Boggs showing the world his knuckleball. And actually pitched rather well. It was August 19th at Anaheim. Angels were leading the Yankees 12-4. A hitless 8th inning. He walked 1, but struck out Todd Green, who had to then go face his teammates in the dugout. And now, as Roberts waits for the 2-0 pitch, out comes Joe Torre, and this might be a 4-out night for Mariano Rivera. It will be. Jeff Nelson got out of that bases-loaded 2-out jam in the 7th. Leaves with 1 on, 2 out here in the 8th. And Mariano Rivera will enter here in inning number 8. Well, it is a long time ago that we were setting up the pitching matchup for this game. Hershiser and Cone, they are both long gone. The numbers for Cone still out on the dugout bench watching here in the 8th.
And it looked like he went in and put John Wetland's old hat on. Look at all those sweat stains on his cap. Looked like John Wetland may have bequeathed his cap to David Cone.
That thing was just rank by the end of the season last year.
Man, I'm telling you. Well, that one's going on it for David.
Here's Mariano Rivera. 43 saves, second most not only in the American League, but in the major leagues for Rivera. Second to Randy Myers of the Orioles. 1 on, 2 out, 2-0 the count, 3-0. Roberts is on base for the 4th time tonight. A hit, a walk in the inning, and here's the scouting report on Mariano Rivera.
That explosive high four-seam fastball with a little bit of giddy up at the end of it, and most hitters will talk about that second bullet point. He hides the ball so well, his delivery is so smooth and so slow that the ball really seems to jump on you when you're up there at the plate. And the key to getting to him is make him get the ball down.
It was tough for him to come into that situation because the diminutive Roberts has a small strike zone, and he has a tough time getting the ball down to the first hitter normally.
Gets that down to Vizquel for strike one, 95 miles per hour. Tying runs are on for the Indians. Great speed aboard with Giles, the lead runner, and Bip Roberts, the tying run, the trail runner. 2 on, 2 out, 0-1 on Vizquel. He went strike 2.
The first 2 pitches to Roberts were high. Next 2 pitches were down in the zone to Vizquel. Omar going too far on this fastball inside.
The Indians are assured, however, that Ramirez, Tomey, and Justice will bat before the end of the night. 2 on, 2 out. Martinez to his right. And over. Rivera comes in and shuts the door on the 8th inning. The Indians now have left 8. Bottom of the 8th. Yankees bat up by 2.
The 1997 American League Division Series on Fox is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. Come by your local authorized dealer and fall in love. By Starter, the authentic jacket for all 28 Major League Baseball teams. By Gatorade Thirst Quencher, you don't have to live thirsty. Life is a sport. Drink it up. And by Burger King, where you get your burger's worth.
Welcome back to Yankee Stadium, along with our producer, John Filippelli, our director, Bill Webb, Joe Buck, Tim McCarver, Bob Brenly. We get into the bottom of the 8th inning. Yankees bat leading by 2. The end of tonight's game. Tim, Bob, and I will select the Chevy Truck player of the game. Here's Ray Sanchez. What a night for Sanchez. His first in the postseason. He is making it count, facing Mike Jackson in strike 1.
Still think the biggest hit in that 5-run 6th inning was the hit by Sanchez to right field that set it up for the power guys. The little bloop and then 3 straight home runs. You've got Eric Plunks pitching out of a stretch. New life if he opens a new inning with nobody on base. Still a 2-run lead. Huge hit by Sanchez.
Two balls and a strike on Ray. High for 3-1 from Mike Jackson, who earlier in the year when Mesa was struggling was the closer for the Indians. Back had 15 saves. Mesa bettered him with 16 on the year. Full count on Sanchez.
Bob and I were talking about it between innings. We both agreed that Mike Jackson's the guy that held this pitching staff together. The short man early in the year for about 2 months before Jose Mesa could get on track. Now Mesa is on track, but Mike Jackson really held that bullpen together, and a case could be made that he's one of the big reasons the Indians are in postseason play.
Just missing on 3-2 and a leadoff walk to Ray Sanchez on base for the 3rd straight time. And Mike Hargrove Wondering where that pitch was. This week, America's most watched pregame show back on the road, and they'll be live from Green Bay. And don't miss the key NFC Central battle as in Green Bay, the 5-0 Buccaneers take on the Packers or other regional action. Coverage begins at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, right here on Fox. Check your local listings for the game and time in your area. And here's Tim Rock Rain. Hit the game-tying 2-run home run in the 6th inning. Going bunt, taking ball 1. Talked about the Indians in the 9th inning, assured of having Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome, and David Justice to the plate. Important for Jackson to keep this a 2-run game. You get one base runner, you have a chance. Off Jackson to Robert, another flip from the glove. And a 1-4-6-3 double play. Not a bad combo up the middle for Roberts and Vizquel.
That is the 4th double play turned by Roberts and Vizquel in this ball game, and they've turned them in every imaginable fashion. 3 times with Chad Curtis bearing down on the 2 of them.
And once again, Roberts with the flip out of the glove, never got the bare hand on the ball. Very dangerous play out there in the middle infield, but so far he's been either very fortunate or very good twice.
2 out, nobody on for Jeter, and a strike from Jackson. For some reason, the Yankees abandoned the bunt. Raines was swinging. Jackson deflected it to Roberts, onto Vizquel and onto Thome for the double play. 2 out, nobody on, and Jeter squirts one foul for strike 2.
That'll probably be something that Frank Torre will be telling Joe Torre tomorrow. Why'd you abandon the bunt? Joe said it was fine today because they haven't played their first postseason game. Frank back in the hospital. Joe talking to him this afternoon. You may remember that last year Frank Torre had a heart transplant. Huge story, as was the Torre story of last year. So moving that it's going to be made into a movie, being shown the middle of this month.
Still 1-2. Well, Frank Torre is thinking ahead to Thursday night's Game 2 matchup. Frank, here you go. On your left, Jarrett Wright, 21-year-old right-hander, hard-throwing right-hander. And on your right, 18-game winner, left-hander Andy Pettitte. And we have that game for you on Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Fox.
And look, the veteran Pettitte is not charting the pitches while the rookie Wright is.
Second-year player Derek Jeter strikes out, and we are through 8 innings here in Game 1. The big guys coming up for the Indians in the 9th inning. Rivera back to work. It's a 2-run Yankee lead. We have played 8. The Indians come to the plate here in the 9th inning with Ramirez, Thome, Justice, 2 up. 8-6 Yankees. And Ramirez first in to face Mariano Rivera. He closed out the 8th. And he starts the 9th with strike 1. 95 miles per hour. This season against the Indians, the numbers: 1 save, a big ERA, just under 5. The Indians not without hope here in the 9th inning. They need a base runner to have a chance. 1-1. We came in talking about David Cone and Oral Hershiser. We'll go out talking about the 2 offenses and the 2 bullpens. The 1-1 to Ramirez. Up the middle. Jeter can't get to it, and the Indians have a leadoff hit here in the 9th. And they have their chance with Thome, Justice, and Williams coming up.
Joe, you and I did a Saturday game earlier in the year. Jim Thome homered off of Mariano Rivera on a fastball about waist-high inside part of the plate. That made the game 3-2, and that's where it ended. But it could have been a big home run, and we'll see how Rivera, pitchers have long memories. We'll see how he works Thome right here.
Remember that at bat. Tomey had great swings against Rivera. The matchup, as Tomey represents the tying run, comes up empty, strike one. Ramirez has given the Indians a chance here in the 9th inning.
I'm a little surprised Tino Martinez is holding Ramirez on. He's going nowhere. Pull hitter Tomey up there. I think you ought to play behind him here.
Broken bat flare. Caught by Jeter, one away.
He timed it perfectly. He wanted to jump initially, and by the time he finally jumped, basketball skills do come in handy in baseball.
You talk about getting up.
I'm telling you. Terrific high school basketball player in Kalamazoo, Michigan. His first rebound of the night.
Took a hit away from Tomey, and now David Justice represents the tying run at the plate. And they play behind the runner Ramirez at first.
That was plain and simple an oversight with Tomey up there, because you're going to do it more with Tomey up there than you would with David Justice up there. Tino Martinez behind Ramirez right now.
Trailing after 8, the Indians only 1 win, 64 losses. And that win was against the Yankees in September. When the Indians clinch, as Justice takes high, 1-1.
That was close. You can see where Mariano Rivera would have a lot of check swings with hitters because they have to start so quickly. You don't have much time, but it looked like David held up. Good call by third base umpire Dale Scott.
1-1 to Justice, strike 2. That was off his front foot, a foul ball. And it's a 1-2 count.
How about Joe Girardi doing the limbo over the swing, or under the swing, of David Justice? David hits the ball off his foot. Now watch Girardi going down toward first, and then back up with a bat, and he almost plucked him with the coconut.
We get a look at this. That is the laugh of an ex-catcher.
Certainly inadvertent by David Justice, but that was funny.
Joe Torre out to argue. The count is 1-2 on Justice. We have sent Bob Brenly down. Try to grab an interview after this game, so he will fight the masses. The Indians trying to fight their way back. Justice set up at 1-2. Another check of the swing, and the 2-2 count now.
You see how fast, though, David Justice has to make up his mind. A guy like Rivera gets you to jump at him. That's one of the worst things you can do with a hitter, but you got to turn it up and start early against the guy who throws that hard.
2-2 to Justice. Do it again toward the end of the year, while David Cohn was going through all he went through with a tendonitis. Mariano Rivera said he was having a tough time loosening up, a difficulty with that throwing shoulder, but he said once he finally got loose, it was no problem. And the way he's throwing the ball, it's obvious that it isn't.
And he was rested properly by Joe Torre.
Indians need some thunder from Justice. They check. He did not go, and it's a full count. David Justice was at the mercy of Dale Scott, and he lives to see another pitch.
Here it is again. Holds up in time. He has had 3 check swings in this at bat, and each time he is held up.
Tying run at the plate. 3-2 to Justice. Another one for Jeter, but little easier this time for the second out. And it's smack up to Matt Williams.
That just gives you an idea of how hard and heavy that high fastball is for Mariano Rivera. Most guys who throw a high fastball, it's light. It's that cross seamer. He jams Tomey. He jams Justice.
The Indians down to their final out. How disheartening a loss this would be for the Indians in a short best-of-5 series. A 5-0 lead. The Indians bullpen could not hang on. Hershiser could not get through 5. And it's now the Yankees bullpen following that Yankee thunder in the 6th inning trying to hang on to a lead. Strike one. Mariano Rivera shooting for his first postseason save. Of course, last year, that tandem of Rivera and Wetland, it was Wetland the World Series MVP. Strike two. And now will be delayed as some debris gets loose out in right field. Matt Williams and Mariano Rivera have a little while longer to think about this 0-2 pitch. And the Indians will have an off day tomorrow to think about what might be a very disappointing night, to say the least, here at Yankee Stadium. Up 5-0 after a half inning, 6-1 after 3.5. It's 8-6 New York in the ninth. Williams a tying run at the plate, the 0-2. Three high fastballs from Rivera to Matt Williams.
I think Matt may see some more, too. Swinging through the first two, it is so hard to make him get the ball down.
Game over. The one that got away here at Yankee Stadium for the Indians. And the New York Yankees come roaring back down by 5 early to win it 8-6.
Dead red high again, and Williams with a check swing to end it.
Game 1 belongs to the world champions in this best-of-5 series. Game 2 is Thursday night here at Yankee Stadium. Joe Torre stomps off the field, the victorious manager here tonight. And our Chevy Truck player of the game, right-handed reliever Ramiro Mendoza. We came in talking about Cone and Hershiser. It's Mendoza, 3 1/3 shutout innings. He gets the win. His first in postseason. Plunk gets the loss. Rivera, again, his first postseason save. An 8-6 Yankee victory, and some of the Indian players can't believe what hit him here tonight in Game 1. Down on the field, our other partner, Bob Brenly, who has an interview. Bob.
Well, we're standing here with Tim Raines, one of the stars of the ballgame. Tim, you guys fell behind 5-0 early. What was the feeling in the dugout at that point?
Well, we felt if David could hold him there, we felt we had a chance. The bats started coming around in about the 4th or 5th inning, and we had a couple opportunities earlier we could capitalize, and we was wondering if that was going to go astray, but things came together and we were able to get back in the game and win it.
How about your experience last year in the postseason? Did that help you stay in the ball game tonight?
I think so. Not only that, the games we won on the road, I think, you know, losing here at home and feeling that we have a chance to go on the road and win some ball games, give us an opportunity to feel like regardless of what's happening, we got a chance to come back and win.
You know, Joe Torre made a controversial decision inserting you as that DH in the lineup. You really responded in a big way tonight.
Well, I think so. I think I came back after the injury and it proved that I deserved to play, and I think Joe looked at it that way, and that was the reason why I was playing today.
Well, Tim, congratulations. Great ball game tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Joe, back up to you.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. Congratulations to Tim Raines and the Yankees. Don't forget, Thursday, we're right back here for Game 2 of the American League Division Series. Jared Wright of the Indians takes on Andy Pettit and the Yankees. Catch all the action beginning live at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, right here on Fox. We remind those of you in the Eastern and Central time zones, local news is coming your way. And in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, regular programming is next. Game 1 of this best-of-5 belongs to the world champions, a final of 8-6. For Bob and Tim, I'm Joe. Good night. You've been watching Fox Sports coverage of Major League Baseball.